Let's look at the funk.
Could you stop playing with that radio of yours? I'm trying to get to sleep. Could you stop playing with that radio of yours? I'm trying to get to sleep. Could you stop? Could you stop? I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to get to.
This is most disturbing. Let's look at the funk.
Could you stop playing with that radio of yours? Could you stop playing with that radio of yours? I'm trying to get to sleep. I'm trying to get to sleep. Playing with that.
Alright, I've just been like watching Taylor the Wren's videos that I haven't seen. I have a bunch of... Like Sunday, I'm just like playing catch up basically. Oh, it will never happen. William Lifetime.
So MAGA
No, yeah,
scored
see.
a massive victory in their little minds. Was it?
Hear about it. Really? If I listen to the news about the
Among the
distraction,
groups
I'm
fighting
falling
against
for it.
Israel's ongoing genocide on Palestine is one that leftists tend to relate to most, but also know very little about it. Today, it occupies a weaker position among the resistance alliance compared to the Islamic factions, but it was once the second largest force, its history and influence being a central pillar in the fight for Palestinian liberation. There's a lot of misconceptions about it in liberal scholarship, of course, but also among the left, and we're gonna talk about some of its leftist critics. Understanding Palestine means understanding this force, a beacon of internationalism and anti-imperialism, contributing to the science of making revolution, and crucially shaping the concrete strategies to liberate the occupied homeland. How did it apply Marxism to the harsh realities of Palestine? How did they analyze the class struggle in connection with Palestinian Arab nationalism and the issue of the Israeli working class? How did it differ from other leftist factions? And why did its relative position within the resistance decline? In order to grasp the challenges relevant to Palestine today, and most importantly, to understand our own role in the struggle for a free Palestine and against imperialism, it is crucial to learn about the movement that entered into world fame with spectacular actions, that fought fiercely against normalization, struggled against betrayal and collaboration in the Arab world and within their own country, and a movement that applied the ideology of Marxism-Leninism to the liberation of Palestine.
Shit.
Before we start, I just want to say thank you to all those who
Lyin,
keep
come on,
supporting
that's
the
like-
channel with donations. These videos require a huge amount of time, and each new supporter helps me immensely to keep going. So if you find this work valuable,
Maybe it
consider
is.
to
Maybe he
check
gets
out the
some gear that,
Patreon
like,
link
kinda cuts off,
down below.
some of the,
Thank you.
the harsher edges on his voice.
Lida, July
It's not
1948.
just overpower the
A
mic, though,
massacre.
It is like his literal.
30,000 Palestinians forced onto the roads, marching for 3 days without food or water, driven from their homes by Zionist forces, losing everything.
Listen to me. I'm not even listening. I'm just
Witnessing
like,
this
it's the only
horror
thing I can
that
think
led
about.
to his
I feel
sister's
so
death
bad.
was a young, previously apolitical medical student. Years later, he remembered what became known as the Lida Death March. The Israelis came to Lida and forced us to flee. It is a picture that does not leave my mind and that I will never forget. 30,000 people walking, crying, screaming with terror. This trauma would fuel his lifelong quest for Palestinian liberation. That young medical student was George Habash, also known as El Hakim, future doctor and first General Secretary of Al-Jabha Shabiya li Tahrir Filastin, in English, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. In the last video, we introduced a faction which would come to be the largest force in Palestinian resistance, Fatah, with the well-known Yasser Arafat as its leader.
Oh, fuck.
Disappointed by the Arab failure to defend the Zionist takeover of Palestine during the Nakba, Fatah focused on independent Palestinian action for liberation. Its main competitor in the mid-60s was the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, which was created by the Arab states and was to a great extent under its influence. You can watch that video after you finish this one, but keep in mind that that information is key if you want to understand the decisions of the PFLP in the next videos, as it will become Arafat's chief Palestinian opponent. The people around Habash, who eventually founded the PFLP, also called the Front, were first part of another important organization alongside Fatah, which we have to talk about first. After being forced to live in exile as a refugee, Josh Habash ended up at the American University of Beirut, AUB, a hub of intellectual ferment.
Oh, fuck me.
Here, influenced by professors preaching Arab unity and progress, and surrounded by others who shared the scars of 48, the seeds were sown.
No, I was too quick on the draw.
Here, he met people like Wadi Haddad, another Palestinian Christian like Habash, whose family fled Safad in 48. Haddad also studied medicine at UAB. Together, they founded the Arab Nationalist Movement, the ANM,
No!
around
Yeah, make that shot
1951. The ANM's initial goal was clear: Palestine's liberation. But crucially, they saw this as achievable only after uniting Arab nations and freeing them from Western colonial control. So these guys weren't short on
Oh, I don't like this
ambition.
one more. Fuck.
As Haddad
Bad mood.
famously told recruits, the road to Tel Aviv passes through Damascus, Baghdad, Amman, and Cairo. This was Pan-Arabism, heavily influenced by the rising star of Egypt's Jamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser's anti-Western stance, his nationalization of the Suez Canal, his support for Algeria's liberation struggle resonated deeply with the ANM. They hitched their wagon to this star, believing Arab unity under his leadership was the prerequisite for confronting the Zionist entity.
Oh my god, I almost didn't see it.
A short note on the emergence of Arab nationalism, since this is a very important concept here. The development of modern Arab history was characterized by a dominant merchant character, with the
I have to really
exception
pee, I'm
of
sorry.
peasant-based Egypt.
I know,
Long-distance
just
trade
read it, I couldn't do it
facilitated
before.
that Arabic was homogenized throughout the majority Sunni Islamic region, isolating distinct agricultural regions, often Berber and Shiite. Islamic law, for instance, reflects this merchant-centric nature. This is in contrast to Europe's feudal, peasant-based structure that contributed to diversification into nations and faster capitalist development. This structure was fragile, collapsing when trade routes shifted away, and hindered the emergence of capitalism in the Arab world until forced to integrate by imperialism. Imperialism subordinated these economies and created a dependent local capitalist class. The capitalists aspiring to independent industrialization, the national bourgeoisie, were weak and hindered in their development, often overshadowed by collaborator agrarian elements content with the status quo. This led to unstable political parties heavily influenced by the petty bourgeoisie, and ultimately the rise of Nasserism, where the state substituted for the weak private bourgeoisie. From the beginning, the struggle against Zionism meant struggle against colonialism and imperialism, and the Palestinian question became the central test for the Arab leadership's anti-imperialist credentials. This was the test which first broke the collaborator capitalist parties and which will soon break the new ones. In South Lebanon, the Arab nationalist movement recruited young, sharp intellectuals like Mohsen Ibrahim, whose grasp of theory would later steer the movement decisively towards Marxism. Other key figures soon joined. One certain brilliant writer and future PFLP spokesman was recruited by Habash in Damascus in 1953. His name, Ghassan Kanafani. Another was a certain AUB student who had witnessed her family being forcibly displaced and who joined the A&M at age 15. She also wanted to join its military arm, but wasn't allowed to do so. Yet. The A&M wasn't just talk. They even organized resistance against UN resettlement camps, seeing them as attempts to liquidate the Palestinian cause, and built clandestine cells in refugee camps, especially among UNRWA teachers. One such teacher would later join the PFLP, a certain Ahmad Saadat. He will also make history within the front. During the 1958 Lebanon crisis, when pro-Western Maronite Christian President Shamoun resisted joining Nasser's United Arab Republic and called in American troops under the Eisenhower Doctrine, A&M members like Habash, Ibrahim, and a certain Hawatmeh were smuggling weapons and fighting Shamoun, supporting more progressive figures. It's not the last time we would see a progressive alliance between Palestinian and Lebanese forces, but more on this in the next video. Seeing US Marines land in Beirut, naked gunboat diplomacy cemented their view of American imperialism as the primary enemy of the Arab people, propping up reactionary regimes and the Zionist state. The people around Ibrahim began questioning the simple pan-Arab formula, arguing that social and economic structures and the class struggle were key. They saw the need for social revolution as interlinked with national liberation. By 1964, splits emerged between those wanting closer ties to Nasser versus those largely disillusioned after the Syria-Egypt-UAR split, demanding a focus on Palestine and independent action. Habash, trying to hold things together, agreed to form an autonomous Palestinian branch within the A&M. But he remained cautious about independent Palestinian military action. They avoided large attacks on Israel because they didn't want to force Egypt's leader, Nasser, into fighting Israel too soon. Kanafani captured this tightrope walk when he said that Palestinian action should be, quote, above zero but below entanglement. At this point, the A&M opposed the notion of a Palestinian entity, fearing that it would make Arab states not care about it anymore. However, as they watched Fatah gain traction, they felt the pressure from their own impatient base. Then came June 1967, Al-Naqsa, a catastrophe that dwarfed even the Nakba in many ways. The Arab armies were shattered, the West Bank, Gaza, Sinai, Golan Heights, lost. Nasserism lay exposed and humiliated. This defeat was the ultimate catalyst. It proved, in blood and fire, the failure of the Arab nationalist leadership, as the A&M itself admitted in stark self-criticism shortly after. The path forward had to be different. While Fatah escalated its operations, the A&M talked to other groups like Ahmad Jibril's Palestine Liberation Front to unite it with its Palestinian branch. Fatah and Jibril will be the only ones to reap the credit, and that will finish us. Finally, the A&M's Palestine branch, Jibril's PLF, and other small factions decided to unite and announce their presence with a bang. Starting with an attack on Ben Gurion Airport on December 11, 1967, the decision was announced from Beirut. A new front had been forged in the fires of defeat and disillusionment. A front committed not just to guerrilla warfare, but increasingly to a Marxist-Leninist analysis of the struggle against Zionism, imperialism, and Arab reaction. The Popular Front for the liberation of Palestine
Shit.
was born.
Totally wrong shot. There we go. No! Oh my god. Oh wow. That is
One
so
crucial
fucking lucky.
difference to Fatah was that the PFLP connected Palestinian liberation to the class struggles in
can't even
surrounding Arab
believe it.
states, while Fatah
that's
cared
another
less
warning,
about
right?
what's happening outside Palestine.
I need to hold off
Later in
on
the series, we will
nudging
see
for a
the
second.
important consequences of this. Another key difference was that Fatah operated as a broad-based movement, encompassing diverse ideologies without a clear, unified ideological framework for liberation. Instead, it prioritized concrete, day-to-day practice to defeat the enemy, an approach that would also carry ramifications. While the front was much more ideologically homogeneous, it also had a front character, as its name implied, encompassing various groups that kept their individual leadership at the time. One branch carried a similar name to Hamas's military arm today, named after famous martyr Izz-al-Din al-Qassam. Naming military brigades after martyrs is a common thing in Palestine. The PFLP will do the same. At the beginning, however, the front's focus wasn't coherently Marxist-Leninist. But with the failure of the Six-Day War, there came a crucial shift. The bourgeois leaders disappointed, while the lower classes displayed much more determination in pushing national liberation forward,
Damn.
as was the case in many other liberation struggles. The front now more clearly envisioned a Palestinian-led peasants on the blazing earth, the poor and oppressed in our cities, villages,
The worst
and
part
in
about
miserable
pinball is
camps, to
you can be doing
liberate the
really well, and
homeland
then
instead of
that happens and
reliance
it just
on the Arab
ruins everything.
states, which could not be trusted. Liberating Palestine wasn't just part of a wider
And now I'm
Arab
gonna be in my head, I'm
revolution.
gonna
It was now seen
lose
as a
every ball.
precondition
Go right
for
over
it.
my head.
The fight over occupied Palestine is a, quote, active part of the march of the
Self-fulfilling
Arab
prophecy.
Revolution
Now
against
I'm in my
world
head.
imperialism and its agents' forces. The 67 defeat also brought a sobering reality check. Gone was the unrealistic talk of swift victory that preceded the war. The PFLP emphasized a long-term and bitter struggle instead of the short-term military adventure of the Arab states. This shift showed the growing influence of Chairman Mao's thought, the idea of the protracted People's War.
Risky?
Trying to defeat Israel with conventional militaries is a bourgeois illusion. Along came the realization that the defeat exposed a complex web of colonial and class-based alliances connecting the US, Israel, and reactionary Arab governments. This was also the period where revolutionaries broke with many big established communist parties that
Am I
had
getting
ossified
irritated?
into
There's no timer
reformism
on these, I
and
don't think.
reliance on peaceful means. Inspired by China's Cultural Revolution and the events that
I'd
led
like
to
a
the strikes of
multi-ball. I
May
wish there
'68
were a way
in
to get
France.
one
It's
quickly.
also where the Sino-Soviet split reached its high point. The USSR supported the general Arab cause against Israel primarily through its relationships with key Arab states like Egypt. But it viewed the stability of
Damn.
these states as paramount for its influence in the Middle East, and thus were initially critical of the, quote, mythical
worst.
diversionary
The
groups,
worst.
since
Literally the
these
worst
provoked
shot I could've
Israeli
taken.
retaliation prematurely and were supposedly orchestrated, quote, by well-known services
it was
or
gonna happen.
agencies of these services for provocation purposes. According to
Alright,
Arafat,
yeah.
it wasn't until
Right
1970
in your head.
that Soviet leaders called the guerrilla fighters a progressive and patriotic liberation movement. Mao's China had broken with the Soviet Union, partly because of the latter's shift toward the so-called peaceful coexistence policy, which it labeled as revisionism and a betrayal of revolutionary
Oh my
principles. While China would become the biggest supporter of Fatah, it also supported the front, while being much less
Okay,
disturbed
awesome.
by its guerrilla actions. Today, China doesn't arm or train any resistance factions, but is Israel's second largest trading partner. Arafat said the People's Republic of China was, quote, the biggest influence in supporting our revolution and strengthening its perseverance. And George Habash insisted, quote, our best friend is China. China, being a champion of global anti-colonial and anti-imperialist movements, had an effect on the front's outlook and gradual
me.
adoption of Marxism. But there was another crucial factor in
Oh, I'm
this
gonna lose
shift,
a ball here for sure.
one
I hate these
which was
things.
internal.
Not like the alien, just these specific types
This
of
intense
missions.
period also brought internal fractures. Ideological and generational schisms that were present before '67 now cracked open. In March 1968, Front leader Habash was arrested in Syria. He was accused of involvement in destroying a pipeline, though suspicions of plotting a coup against the Syrian government also lingered. Habash's charisma had been a unifying force. His absence left a vacuum, allowing tensions to escalate. A group around often non-Palestinian members like Nayef Hawatmeh and Muhsin Ibrahim were involved with the newspaper Al-Hurriya. These former A&M cadres grew louder in their criticism of the older PFLP leadership, whom they saw as resistant to a full embrace of Marxist-Leninist class analysis and too supportive of Arab nationalist leaders. At a PFLP conference in August 1968, the Hurriya group pushed the PFLP to issue a basic political statement, which identified Arab governments like Egypt and Syria as petty bourgeois failures. This infuriated Nasser, who then cut off PFLP funding. Ahmad Jibril, acting leader during Habash's imprisonment and more conservative, couldn't hold the factions together. He ultimately left with his followers in October 1968. Syria, which supported him, also pushed for this split. He disagreed with the Marxist-Leninist direction the PFLP was taking under the leadership of Habash. Hawatmeh annoyed him especially. Jibril favored a more militaristic and less ideologically driven approach to the Palestinian struggle and formed the PFLP General Command. This faction will become very important later. So the front was mired in splits and contradictions, which made it even harder to catch up to Fatah. A month later, Habash escaped from prison. The escape was famously organized by fellow front leader Haddad, reportedly involving PFLP commandos disguising themselves as Syrian military police. The other front members, meanwhile, called the Hurriya group petty bourgeois and criticized its approach as dogmatic and immature. The adolescent cafe intellectuals were disconnected from Palestinian reality and the guerrilla struggle. Kanafani would speak of, quote, the petty bourgeois intellectuals who are short-tempered and quick to fatigue, who always are in a hurry, proceed along the path of struggle like locusts. After exchanging the petty bourgeoisie accusations, the split manifested just before the front's February 1969 conference. Hawatmeh and the Hurriya group broke away, forming the Popular Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PDFLP, later renamed and better known as the DFLP. Just before that, Ibrahim broke away along with the Lebanese branch of the A&M as well, forming an independent Lebanese socialist organization. We will come back to this one later in the series. Along with the DFLP, it now shared editorial control of Al-Hurriya magazine, making the PFLP start a new one, Al-Hadaf, with Ghassan Kanafani as the editor-in-chief.
Oh my god, it happened.
During the same conference, the PFLP argued that it was the true representative of the proletariat in the refugee camps and officially adopted Marxism-Leninism as the front's political ideology. Habash later lamented the inability to resolve these differences internally. Those two factions would later try to reunite at various points, but in the meantime, the differences were not insignificant, and Hawatmeh will soon make important maneuvers at key political moments of the resistance, but more on that in the next part. People tend to draw hasty conclusions from the split of a very young movement, still struggling with the complex contradictions involved in Palestinian and Arab class relations and the liberation struggle. From Mao's thought, the PFLP adopted the concept of primary and secondary contradictions to formulate its strategy.
The question of Palestine is the question of a contradiction, of a clashing contradiction between the national liberation movement of the Arabs, headed by the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, and between imperialism in this part of the world, headed by the Zionist movement.
The primary effort was national liberation, with the internal class struggle being shaped by this overarching contradiction between imperialism, Zionism, and the Palestinian people. This is why solid national unity of resistance forces is the first task in national liberation. This means that contradictions between the factions are secondary, and that prioritizing those will lead to a weakening of the resistance and to loss of support in the population, since it, first and foremost, desires liberation from foreign domination. As Marx and Engels explained in the case of 19th century Poland, as long as a viable people is held in bondage by a foreign conqueror, it necessarily directs all its strength, all its efforts, all its energy against the external enemy. Thus, its inner life remains paralyzed, and it remains incapable of working for social emancipation. Engels expressed this more plainly in a letter to Karl Kautsky, quote, "Now for a great
Funny.
people, it is historically impossible to even seriously discuss any internal issues as long as national independence is lacking. Polish socialists who do not place the liberation of the country at the forefront of their program seem to me like German socialists who would not first demand the abolition of the anti-socialist law. In order to be able to fight, one must first have ground to stand on, air, light, and elbow room. Otherwise, it's all just empty talk." Now, in the case of Palestine, the air, light, and elbow room is as tight as it gets. This does not mean, however, that these secondary
what? What the
contradictions
fuck?
are not important, but that they are best served by tackling them through the lens
just
of the main
disappeared.
contradiction, which then allows another secondary
crazy?
contradiction
That was
to become the
crazy.
primary one. Pushing the class struggle forward is best achieved through participating in
I know it
national
would do that.
liberation, so to speak. But here comes the problem, and possibly the most important dilemma of the front throughout the coming years. What if the
I'm
leading
getting a
force
little too
appears to sell
anticipatory,
out the
like,
cause
I'm
and
getting
serve
too soon.
Israeli interests? How to deal with growing opportunism within your own ranks
No, I'm-
while following the task of national unity?
Correcting. Okay, hello.
The PFLP developed a class analysis based on their concrete reality. As a people suffering from the special, overwhelming
this game
condition
are
of
really
settler
hard.
colonialism, they saw the destitute Palestinian refugees residing in camps throughout the region as the core of the proletariat. Importantly, in contrast to the Hurriya group, they also included sections of the Palestinian petite bourgeoisie, educated professionals who had lost their traditional status due to occupation and exile, arguing these were uniquely revolutionary compared to their counterparts elsewhere. In this book, the authors use reductive labels like Stalinist and mechanistic to categorize diverse Palestinian revolutionary groups for their alliance with some Arab states. An examination of the facts reveals that the front was well aware of the dangers of these alliances, in fact more so than some Western booksellers.
What does that do?
Habash had been
Okay.
literally jailed by Syria. By not even looking at the concrete history and the reasons for making these alliances, such criticism fails to explain anything.
Damn.
Also very common is the accusation that the Palestinian left was too nationalistic and should have done more outreach
Oh
to
my
the
God.
Israeli working class. Under the mantle of abstract internationalism, these charges stem from a normalization of the oppressor's national chauvinism. Remember, this is not a situation where there are
never gonna
two
make
countries
it.
with two people that have lived side by side for
It's
centuries.
over for me.
This is
It's
one
over.
country, where one set of people is living on stolen land from which the other is displaced and militarily occupied. Just like the Jewish-led Communist Party before the Nakba in Palestine, these authors regard the national and the class question as two isolated, separate things and fail to see their interconnection.
Okay, fuck. I'm
We
bad
will
at that.
talk
That
more
one-
about the
I'm
class
really bad at that
analysis
one.
in Palestine and the Israeli working class in a coming video, since
I'm not-
this is
hold
an
on, what am I
important
talking about?
topic
This is
in
going
today's
horribly.
discourse. For now, let's note down that the PFLP viewed the interconnection of these two spheres, writing, "National liberation is class struggle." Whereas Marx said in relation to the British occupation of Ireland, quote, "The Irish question is therefore not simply a question of nationality, but one of land and existence." The front regarded wealthier Palestinians as less likely to advance liberation, since the toiling classes had felt the loss of their homeland in a more material sense, whereas the upper classes tend to subscribe to sentimental feelings of loss through a rhetorical patriotism, impotent anger, sad longing, all abstracted from any kind of political commitment or action. Although these classes are hindered in fulfilling their own bourgeois nationalist interests, they have greater potential to be successful by succumbing to the enemy, becoming a
So the jungle people
comprador
is, like,
bourgeoisie,
timed or
a
something? That's kinda
temptation
weird.
whose consequences are about to unfold
don't
over
see
the
that very
next few
often.
decades. Aside from the two Marxist fronts, there was also the aforementioned Jewish-led Palestine
need to make
Communist
this under
Party.
thought.
After the establishment of the State of Israel and the annexation of the West Bank by Jordan, West Bank Palestinians joined the Jordanian Communist Party, JCP, which prioritized rebuilding and non-violent organizing, considering immediate guerrilla fighting premature and adventurous. The separate Palestinian
get
Communist
better at not
Organization,
doing
PCO, in Gaza also started with non-violent protest, but shifted to armed struggle during '67, facing
There's a
heavy
better way to catch it
repression.
than always boosting it up to the
During
slings.
this
You
period,
never
many
wanted
members
to do that.
left these groups due to their military inaction
Like,
to join
see,
Fatah
yeah.
and the other
When it hits
fronts.
the slings, it gets
In
chaotic.
the 80s, a JCP section merged with
can't
the
control
Gaza
them all as
organization,
well.
forming
Shit.
another Palestine Communist Party, today known
And it's
as
really
the
likely to
Palestinian
go into-
People's
like,
Party,
they're
which
designed to
then
go
joined
towards
the
the
PLO
outlanes.
in '87. They will eventually back the Oslo Accords, but today criticize its failures, though they still support a two-state solution based on the '67 borders. We're gonna talk about Oslo more in depth later in this series.
Shit, I keep trying to go
In the
further
lead
over
up to
there,
the
and
2021
bizarre.
elections, the Palestine People's Party wanted to join with the PFLP and the DFLP
No,
to
see,
form a
that's
joint
fine,
leftist
exactly.
list. However, differences between the PPP and the Front caused the negotiations to break down.
Not too far.
The PPP is more of an establishment organization and still
little bit.
prioritizes peaceful mass action over armed
No,
resistance.
okay, fuck me.
The question of armed resistance strategy was crucial in the period after '67, especially during the legendary Battle of Karame of 1968 we talked about in the last video. The imprisonment of Habash by Syria left Ahmad Jibril, leader of the Syrian-supported faction, temporarily in charge. At a meeting before the battle, disagreement arose. Fatah argued for staying and fighting. Jibril called this adventurism and decided the PFLP should
Okay,
withdraw
right.
its forces
I'm out
from
of
the
it.
village.
Okay, no.
The
Fuck
front's
boy.
withdrawal proved costly.
Actually, I
Fatah
didn't go so
gained
bad.
immense prestige and popular support from the victory at Karame. Along with later
that's a-
internal splits,
that's an
this
insane
also
bonus.
contributed to the front playing catch-up to Fatah in terms of public support and influence, condemning them, as
I don't know
some
how much
analyses
score
put
is,
it,
guys, like,
to
isn't
a
it- it's
permanent
below-
second place.
No,
The
it's
Karame battle
100.
changed everything, with the guerrillas overtaking the bureaucratic PLO leadership
only
in
one okay,
popularity
let's go. We're doing
and
this.
PLO seats, as talked about in the Fatah video. The front, just like Fatah, was highly skeptical of this body created by the Arab states, but did eventually participate. The PLO now became the official institution of the United Resistance Forces. At the National Council session in February of 1969, the front was angry with an unfair allocation of seats and boycotted the session. Their boycott now enabled Fatah
Maybe I
to
shouldn't do
secure
it
the
right now.
election,
I'm
with
clearly not in
Arafat
the-
being elected
The
as the
headspace
chairman.
for playing pinball.
We
I
will
cannot
keep seeing
take a
this
shot.
important dynamic throughout the next videos. Habash himself, hearing the Karame news from prison, was reportedly pleased by its outcome, seeing any action highlighting the cause as beneficial. But the PFLP had missed a key moment,
No.
and opportunities to rectify this perceived strategic error would soon arise in dramatic fashion, as the
No way.
PFLP sought to
Oh,
make
come
its own
on.
mark on the world stage.
Okay. I'm
Subscribe to the channel
I'm
to not
sorry
miss
if
the next
anybody
part,
watched
where we're gonna tackle the period in which the PFLP took the battle
display.
to the whole world. A period of peak internationalism involving groups across the globe, making the Palestinian cause the cause of the workers of all countries. A period which escalated the sharpening contradictions with Jordan into all-out war, and further revealing a growing rift between the PFLP and
I'll play
Fatah,
pinball for probably for the rest of the
culminating
night.
in the Fatah leadership's fateful turn, a path that Habash would argue led to betrayal. Make sure to go out on 1st of May,
feel like
and we're
having
gonna
that
end
one
with a
game
quote
that
by
was going
Habash on
so
his
well,
May
and then
1st
just
speech in
fucking
1970 in
whiffed
front
all
of
the last
thousands at a
balls.
camp in Jordan. Quote,
It really is
"We
sad
celebrate
with me.
Workers' Day because we believe that the working class is the leader of the revolution for liberation,
Made me
and it
doubt
is
all of my,
only
like,
through its theory, positions,
instincts.
and concepts that one can achieve victory and liberation."
Yeah, that's a hard one. These are really tight lanes. So in pinball, if a lane, like the barriers for a lane are farther away and the lane is tighter, it becomes harder and harder the further away the beginning of the lane is. A lot of tables will have ramps and stuff that are kind of closer up, like almost like 50% of the way up. And so you're kind of given more leeway to hit them. Oh, well, thank you. Oh, come on. The center shot, come on. Hello. Damn. I can't read that one. I'll get that in a second. I'll pause it. I'm distracted. I don't. Oh, you know what I did? I know what I did wrong. I didn't turn on the voiceovers because I was playing Garfield and I fucking hate Garfield. Like, I hate him. I didn't even realize. I bought the table. Like, I knew I didn't like Garfield, you know? Like, I like him, like, in terms of, like, I would never want to, like, actually sit around and read Garfield or watch a Garfield movie. Like, that's tense. But as I played the table and he started to say his lines and stuff, where he's like, oh, it's just my tummy rumbling. And I was like, nah, man. I can't. I fucking hate this character. I hate this whole thing. And I'm not even, like, against, like, that kind of broad like, you know, like, Jim Gaffigan can be funny. It's just, I don't know, Garfield's the fucking worst, man. I hate Garfield. Anyway, I turned off the voiceovers.
Jackpot! A tale is about to start. Shoot left ramp. Shoot center loop.
Now I have my instructions spelled out for me. I don't have to try to look at the dot matrix. That's not a dot matrix. It wasn't. Okay.
Little Red Riding Hood needed to visit her grandmother, who lived in the woods. On the road, she took some flowers, but the wolf was menacing her. Help Little Red Riding Hood get rid of the wolf and reach grandmother's house, where she can have some yummy apple pie. Shoot right ramp.
Fuck. What is wrong with you? I'm talking to myself, obviously, not the ball. The ball's probably fine. Just trying its hardest.
Pick up pies.
Whoa, no way. Okay, what the fuck's happening? Oh no, is it like fucking... See, the problem with digital pinball is they don't have a find ball function. Like, what the fuck? It's or, like, if you wait 15 seconds on, like, real pinball tables, it tries to find the ball, and then, like, if it can, then it, like, realizes there's a problem. But I've had a few times where I've, like, glitched through walls, and the game is just like, oh no! It does this for the rest of the... Or am I supposed to do something? Like, am I missing something? No? Okay, well, oh well. Too bad.
Skill shot. Grim Tales. Once upon a time, there was a witch who locked Princess Chamomile in the tower of her castle. Go, brave knight, save Chamomile.
Damn. That was helpful. a little bit like Black Knight. The newer one. I don't know.
Went to the royal
I don't remember what they called
brought
it.
Cinderella home to do the housework. Help Cinderella pick up all the peas.
Jesus Christ.
Shoot left orbit.
Okay. Okay, come on.
Finally!
I thought I could drop save it. That was embarrassing. Or dead flip it. That's what. Jesus Christ. Alright, well, fuck you.
Jet bumpers multi-ball. After the fairies helped Cinderella and gave her beautiful
Damn it.
took her
Oh,
to
okay,
the
thank
ball.
you.
Be careful, the magic will vanish at midnight.
She is very much like Cinderella.
Aw, fuck. Damn, I can't make that shot. Hello?
The magic vanished, but the prince was charmed by Cinderella's beauty. So they announced the
Okay, well,
wedding
fuck me.
and lived happily ever after. Shoot the castle. Shoot right orbit.
Every shot I take is just like a little bit off. I'm so annoyed right now. Yep. Hold on. I'll be right back. Ooh. Okay, let's go. I will start a video now too, now that I've remembered that that was happening. Dun, dun, dun. The Showa. They're not putting... They don't put the Showa anymore. Oh no, it's there. It's just Showa. Weird.
The situation in
I feel like this is on
Gaza
literally every single
continues
video
to
that
be
very briefly
an
mentions
absolute
it at all.
apocalypse, a holocaust. Don't take
Huh. I keep getting targeted ads for coffins. Like all coffins. Something called Tomb for One More. Blow a Casket. An app called Crypt with no Y, of course, whatever. Clocking in. Hey friends, sup.
It's a little
That stands
loud.
for Snake
Hold on.
Coup, which perfectly brings me to today's subject, book bans. Because here's some news,
Okay, actually,
most
getting a
US
bonus
states are
multiplier is
either banning
really
books or
easy on
fighting
this
to
game. I should be
unban
trying
books
to
or
do that
fighting to
more.
unban the books they banned in the first place. And hey, I
In
know
a
what you're
specific
thinking.
table, not just pinball. I'm aware
What are
of this
books?
function. Just
I
to be
also had to
clear.
Google them. I went down a whole rabbit hole, which is a phrase, apparently, referencing a book. It turns out that books are assorted stacks of pressed tree pulp that have information on them.
Oh,
That
fuck me.
information is often put there by nerds, which makes fearing or banning books real weenie stuff. You scared of nerd books? Come on. Banning them? Come on. Can't even burn them? At least book burners can get a fire going. Book banners have not proven that. You're not gonna pass that Final Four on Survivor, you book banners. Hey, did you know Survivor's been on TV for 24 years and counting? They're going on season 50 like it's The Price is Right.
Hey,
Survivor
where's
is
my
the
iPod?
book of network TV shows.
Oh,
Network
that's-
TV
there's
being
my
the book of
iPod. Hell
entertainment
yeah.
when you think about it, which I will not. So imagine if someone tried to ban Survivor. They'd look like a real weenie, right? Case closed. Okay, but for good measure, let's
my
talk
God,
about
I
book
can't
bans a
even
little
know.
more. Book bans are for weenies.
No way it behaved like that. That was insane.
Hey again.
That should have dead flipped for sure.
Riding Hood needed to visit her grandmother.
So if you live in the United States, you might live in an area where books are getting banned. There might even be some people fighting against those bans, or maybe there aren't. Either way, we are a book ban
Oh
nation.
my god, no way.
The main folks
Okay, I
tracking
need to
book
stop trying
bans
to
are
do it
PEN
then, 'cause
America.
that's just-
PEN, the first three letters
That's
of the word
defined
penis,
everything
is an
about, like, it
American
should be bouncing
nonprofit
apart.
that's
Like,
led
they
the
must be
fight for
hitting the
global
perfect
free
spot, like,
expression
right
for more
between
than
the flipper
100
or something
years
that's
in a
just, like,
truly
removing
legit
all-
way
Why?
and in an on the right
Why?
side of the Cold War way, and also not totally in a legit way for Gaza lately. It's complicated and important, and not quite the topic this week. The point being that PEN America is the least worst option for exploring book bans, which is why we will be using them a lot today. So for example, from just 2023 to 2024, PEN found more than 10,000 instances of public school book bans in the United States. Some of that is overlap, so this came out to over 4,000 unique titles banned across 220 public school districts. But still, the United States, aka a freedom country, banned a book over 10,000 times in a school, aka a freedom factory, in just one academic year. While this problem was relatively specific to three very unsurprising states, Florida, Texas, and yes, Iowa, this is a widespread problem. Public school districts in 29 states, funded with the tax dollars
Oh
from
my
everybody in
God.
those states, banned a book due to complaints from a tiny fraction
Jesus
of taxpayers
Christ.
in those states.
This game is
Often
being cruel to me right now.
bigots.
Also,
Let's
is it-
be clear,
is it broken
there's no
again? Like,
two
what the fuck?
sides here. A small group of people, usually bigots, are dictating what kids can and
Bruh,
cannot
okay,
read
I'm gonna
in these
close the game.
states. Really. In a peer-reviewed
Someone's broken
study,
here.
a researcher at UC Boulder indexed US book bans from the years 2021 and 2022 and found a book was 5 times more likely to be banned if the author was not white. Meanwhile, the American Library
figured that, but,
Association's
I'm
figures
just
say
not gonna play that table. I'll play one more,
45.5%
and
of
then I'm
all
gonna go
ban
watch a piece.
attempts against titles
Lyin
in the
Lyin.
2022 to 2023 school year targeted authors who identify as LGBTQ or books with subject matter suggesting that LGBTQ people exist. Recent bans overwhelmingly target authors who are not a straight white man. They often do this targeting without much attention to the actual content of the book. And of course, along with people of color and people of gay, queer, etc., straightforward historical fiction about the Holocaust gets banned all over modern America. Most notably and recently, there was Mouse, a graphic novel by Art Spiegelman about exactly how awful the Holocaust was. Around the year 2022, districts in Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, and Iowa all banned Mouse. The Missouri district also banned several ordinary works of nonfiction about the Holocaust, straight up history books, because
I don't
they're
wanna see my
bigots,
high
you see.
score.
And bigots
wanna
have
know
a
what it
great
is.
talent for making their hate everyone else's problem, no matter how few of them there
You gonna do
are.
that?
That's why they love book bans, which are extremely easy to push without needing a lot of support. Book banning is, for some bizarre reason, one of the few ways a single person can actually make a difference in this country. Or, let's not discriminate, $250,000. For example, in 2021, State Representative Matt Krause declared himself the one-man book police of Texas. Not
I'm
book
starting to
police in the
worry
fun
about
way,
it
like in Seinfeld,
for the day.
but rather in an
I'm, like,
all
too-
chapters are bastards way.
'Cause I
Matt
might have
sent a
used up
letter
all
to
my
every public
processing
school in
power
Texas
earlier 'cause I
demanding
did
to
some
know
fucking sick-
whether any
like,
titles
really-
on a list of
my highest
850
marks.
books might be on their shelves. For the record, Representative Krause is both allowed to do this and not in charge of doing this. He is just one of the 150 members of the lower house of a state legislature. Less than 1% of 1/2 of a state legislature. He's barely allowed to make you read an email he sends you. But with that one letter, Matt Krause rallied every crank and kook in cowboy land. The very next night, shouting wingnuts and wang dang doodles brigaded a school librarian at a random board meeting in San Antonio. Within a week, staff members
the
at that
law was
same
gone the
school
entire
asked
time
their
I was up. That's
librarians
so
if
lame.
there is porn in the library because they heard that through the grapevine. Entirely because one legislator acted like there might be evil books there, and hey, maybe porn is an evil book. Matt Krause vibed his way into disrupting statewide public and school library services single-handedly. It
I
took
wonder if
2 more
like, if
years
you
for that
nudge to
Texas
the,
lower house to
direction
pass
the
an actual
slingshot
bill
goes in.
banning books. But by the time
Like in
they got
real
around
life,
to
so
passing
I'm
that
thinking
law,
about if you could,
it was sort of
affect
unnecessary.
it going into the
Local
outlets.
districts already yanked hundreds of books off shelves to meet
It
local
always seems like
complaints
it's like in like
or
the
get
perfect
ahead
kinda
of the local
center
complaints they
area.
predicted.
That's like when it's going to
And
be
after
the
the
most
law
deadly,
passed,
and just kind of like
districts
land
and
right in the
legislators
outlet, and you wouldn't even have a
one-upped
chance
it.
to
A private
budget.
school in Houston canceled their Scholastic Book Fair just because that
But they also
fair
are
might
positioned
sell the
differently
wrong
on
book to
different tables.
somebody. Meanwhile, one Texas school board defined cartoon butts as acceptable content and cartoon frontal nudity as unacceptable, which is good to know. No hanging cartoon dong in Texas, but you know they got those cheeks. That town is called Katy, by the way. So does she? She doesn't own a town, right? No, she does not own a town. Anyway, that Texas bill also requires booksellers to index and rate every book they sell based on sexual content, or else not be allowed to do business with schools at all. PEN America helped get that blocked in court, so that's something at least. Except, book publishers have very little patience for printing and shipping a bunch of books that any individual state legislator might pretend are pornos to pander to their base. These companies know the next ban is around the corner, so they play it safe. They print fewer copies of fewer titles. So even if a law gets reversed,
me.
there's no way to
No, you
quickly
better not.
undo the
Okay, thank
damage.
you.
And remember, this is
No!
all because
Fuck me.
Matt sent everyone a memo, and it's still going. On the heels of all those previous laws and bans and book fair
Do I still have the extra roll?
cancellations,
Okay,
state
sometimes- some
lawmakers
tables
are
are,
now
like,
drafting a
it's only
streamlined
available
book
until
ban
you drain.
system that can censor the
Or some
entire
balls,
state's
too, some
library
extra
shelves
balls, just
in one
specifically.
go. Of
Oh, I
course,
didn't even do
Texas
that.
is
You
not
can still tell,
alone,
too.
despite what they claim. They say they're not alone. A similar back and forth wasted everyone's time in Iowa. Iowa's state government passed a book ban law that was so vaguely drafted, it left many schools confused whether any books were allowed anymore. Then a lawsuit blocked the law from taking effect. But then a follow-up appellate case reinstated the law less than a year later. And in those various stages of limbo, Iowa's librarians had to unshelve, reshelve, and re-unshelve all of their copies of more than 3,400 titles. See, it doesn't even matter if these bans stick or are legal. Simply causing the chaos is
Yeah, it's
enough
true.
for these
Fuck me, I'm
folks.
dead.
It's about
I
destabilizing
hate
and
this
punishing
game. I hate
anyone
football. I
who
hate it.
dares
I
to
never wanna
promote
play it.
progressive ideas. They're like if the Joker fought the concept of learning. I can't stress enough how this is just a handful of people making everyone suffer. In Florida, a state I pray doesn't have a town called like Warmboville or something, a school district in 2024 banned some of the works of Toni Morrison, Kurt Vonnegut, and Ayn Rand,
Oh my
as
God,
well
they
as books
banned
like The
Toni
Perks of Being a
Morrison?
Wallflower
That's
and The
crazy.
Handmaid's Tale. Yes, I guess we're gonna defend Ayn Rand books as well. I don't like it any more than you do, but hey, that's books. Also banned were a graphic adaptation of Anne Frank's diary and Sophie's Choice, because if you pretend the Holocaust didn't exist, well, maybe it'll go away. But what's absolutely turd wild, or maybe you expect this already, is that at least half of these bans were spearheaded by just 2 people. One being a single guy with 0 political power who had only lived in Florida for a few years and has 1 teenage kid. This guy named Bruce Friedman, who apparently has multiple versions of that shirt, is telling every kid in Clay County, Florida, what they can and can't read. Bruce moved out of New York City after deciding its schools brainwashed his kid.
I can't anymore.
I mean, so
And by that,
you gotta
I'm gonna
move,
play
right?
because I'm
What other
frustrated.
choice do you have? Talking to your child? Letting them be their own person? Nice try, wokeism. Instead, Friedman relocated his tragically mind-virused family to Clay County, and then lodged hundreds of
I have to
book ban
restart. I'm gonna
attempts
have to
in his
restart.
new location.
If I have a great
Good
ball right
job
now, I'm gonna be
moving
too
out of a
mad.
place you
I'm gonna be
hate
too
to a
mad
new
to go
place you
on.
also hate, I guess. And so, along with just one other person, Bruce Friedman is personally waging this weird war on books. Florida's school administrators spent 10 to 15 hours per week just dealing with 2 cranks. Again, a few people get offended and everyone has to move the world for them. Over in another terrifyingly phallic state named Idaho, libraries are now having to create entirely
forest is
new
empty.
physical sections due to book complaints. That's thanks to a new law that requires them to have a special adult section for certain books. Yes, the same way video stores used to have those little porn areas. The library now has to ensure that minors don't step into this
5
special
million is a
area
horrible
lest
score
they
for
get in
this table.
trouble. Some
I'm
places are having to
pissed.
put books behind the counter like they're cool cigarettes. What's more, if they fail to do this within 60 days, they have to pay the person who complained
Oh, I'm actually not as high as I thought it was.
$250
Like, I mean, okay.
for complaining about a
$1.
book in a
I thought it was
library.
150.
I need to stress this. That's not a fine that the library pays to the state. The library pays the complainer. That's a bounty any random Idahoan can bully out of their library if they catch them in a busy couple of months. Because while this is absurd in itself, a lot of libraries simply aren't big enough to do this. I mean, are there even big libraries in Idaho? Pop quiz. Name 2 large cities in Idaho. You lose if your response included second Boise. So if you're an understaffed small town library now required to add an adults only section, but can't afford to guard it or even build the extra area, what are you to do?
We decided to become an adult only library.
Tough Call
Yeah.
by Sherry Shalene.
Safely prepare ourselves to receive these lines.
That's in Donnelly, Idaho,
Serious
a
gameplay
town with
now.
the kind of
Serious
population you're
gamer.
imagining when you imagine Idaho town population, where the library size is a grand total of 1,024 square feet. I mean, look at it. It's like the size of a Chipotle dining area. This makes it physically impossible for Donnelly's library to comply with the law, which makes it legally impossible to be a library for children. Children being like the main people who go to libraries. But now it's an adults only
true, I didn't even know
library,
that.
I guess. A parent or guardian is required to give permission for their child to enter the Donnelly library. Why?
Guess it makes
Because
sense that
Idaho
children would go to libraries
legislators
more.
passed a law against Idaho-sized libraries, on top of offering a gig work version of Boba Fett bounties to anybody who finds a black or queer book in the digital catalog and times their complaint right. It's creepy, it's censorship, I don't like it, I think I might hate it. But hey now, Cody, hey, yo, Cody. There's also some good news here, because there are at least some states that realize how whack these bans are, bogus even. Last winter, the state of New Jersey passed a law banning book bans. You are banned, bans! They also protected librarians from facing civil or criminal charges for the demonic act of putting a book on a library shelf. And this is just the latest, greatest example. The first state leading this charge was Illinois. In 2023, their Pritzker-pilled government passed a law that withdraws state funding from any library that bans a book for partisan or doctrinal reasons. This law inspired not just New Jersey, but Minnesota, Maryland, and Washington State. Washington State also took this in an interesting direction by focusing on a specific trend in recent book bans. Their law opposes book bans that target a protected class, such as people's race or sexual orientation. Because we need that, it seems. Other states are also on their way, like Massachusetts, which is working on a law that, along with protecting librarians, which apparently we need to do, would incorporate the American Library Association's Bill of Rights. That ensures libraries would have access to books and no material be excluded. That law would also make a clear distinction about who picks books to go into circulation and lay out a process to object to certain books. And while we're talking about good news, it's worth noting that book bans make books objectively, scientifically, way cooler. Remember those weak-ass parental advisory stickers? Those sold millions of CDs back in the day, and those CDs weren't even banned. Bookstores do solid sales numbers during the annual Banned Book Week. The slew of American bans on Mouse back in 2022 also made Mouse one of 2022's best sellers. This kind of rebellious reading goes back many decades. When Australia banned the novel Portnoy's Complaint in the 1970s, underground bootlegs of the book became national icons and museum pieces. To be clear, book bans are terrible.
No!
This is not the best way to market books, let alone get books in kids' hands. Also, book bans can wreck the careers or emotional lives of the authors on the receiving end. But it's nice to know that they are ineffective at the very least, and no one should ever do one unless they're wieners. So hey, cool, there are heroes on both sides. And just like that Star War, there is so much more for us to cover. But first, enjoy some ads. Ads are not books. I promise, Texas will never ban our precious, precious ads. Unless one queer person holds up a can of Bud Light, probably. Boy, hope that doesn't happen. So we can get money. Will we get money? Let's see. Hi, news gobblers! Can I call you a news gobbler? You can't talk back, so it's sticking. It can be really tough to get all the facts these days, what with all the sludge and what have you, and that's why I use Ground News, a website and app we reached out to, which you can access via the QR code on the screen. I've been working with Ground News for a long time, and that's for a reason. I think they're one of the most powerful solutions for breaking down the news and the various slants by which it is presented. For example, I recently saw that Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler, you know, the Pinocchio's guy, took a buyout and will be leaving the newspaper. This was mostly reported by right-leaning outlets who are positively giddy that rampant lies will now go un-Pinocchio'd. The Federalist, while spelling Kessler's name wrong in their article, celebrated his departure and said he leaves behind more fiction than fact. Their evidence? That Kessler talked about how Russia attempted to influence the 2016 election and that the Trump administration attempted to collude with them. Something that did, based on facts and stuff, happen. That rage-inducing diversion was super easy to find with Ground News. At ground.news/SMN, you will get 40% off unlimited access, which gets you all the top headlines, plus extra features like a factuality chart and analysis of the news bias of each source. That's ground.news/SMN for 40% off. The link is in the description. The Pinocchios have escaped! Where'd they go? Their extended noses, they could be used as weapons if you don't track them down soon. Pinocchios!
I need a real
Pinocchios!
I need where I don't misjudge that shot.
When I first started my podcast, Clone Life with Katie Clone,
my God.
it felt like I had to figure everything out on my own. Scripts, setup, filming schedule, trying to remember if I'm Katie 1 or Katie 12. Well, fortunately, I found a new tool that has changed the game. Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, including Red Bull and Dr. Squatch toothpaste. Two things I definitely combined when I came up with this podcast concept.
I'm a little surprised
They get you set up with your own design
I
studio,
didn't think Shopify
email,
was like a super
and social
awesome
media
company.
campaigns, and they've got world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping. Katie 563 is loving Thailand, so I'm told. Shopify has taken care of so many of my business hassles that I can spend my time focusing on an upcoming interview with Katie 52. the one that speaks in a British accent for some reason. So turn your
Those states with book ban legislation, a parent of a student simply files a complaint. These complaint
it's hard to
systems can
balance
be
it. Part of me
online
is like
or
that,
on
like,
paper. I'm sure J.K. Rowling
why would
uses a
you
lot of
take it from,
owls
like, a
to
company
whine
like
about
that, and then the
trans
other part of
people.
me has, like,
She's got some
kinda,
real
like,
whimsical
nihilistic,
hate.
cynical Gen
In a
Z
lot
view
of
just, like,
cases,
get
you
that
don't
bad,
even have to
even
be
if
the
you
parent
get
of a
money from
child
them.
in that school district or even enrolled in public
Taking
school,
money away from
which
me.
is perhaps bad. After that, the
that's-
process
that-
continues
that's
to
how they all
vary.
talk, apparently.
If the complaint goes to a school or a district, either the board members or a designated committee reviews the material. The material usually gets yoinked off of shelves in the meantime because books are guilty until proven innocent, not to mention judged by their covers. So sad. It should also be noted that some of these book bans are temporary or not literally bans. This is according to a very fair and balanced-ish study by the right-leaning Education Freedom Institute titled The Book Ban Mirage. Sounds very reasoned. But in this very clearly politically aligned study's defense, they are technically correct in that these banned books are sometimes still available. To quote the study, and I apologize for the length here, but I'm grateful we get to go full screen now. The advocacy organization PEN America is the primary source for claims that there is widespread book banning underway in American schools. But PEN America's claims hinge on a definition of ban that most Americans would not recognize. In order to assess PEN America's claims by the common definition of banned, i.e. made unavailable, we reviewed the 2021 to 2022 index of banned books against online school library card catalogs. We find that 74% of the books that PEN America lists as banned are listed as available in the same districts from which PEN America says those books were banned. So there you have it. Book bans never happened. Why are we even making this video? Ads? Or wait. Maybe. Let's keep reading into it.
I hate pinball.
Books. Reading is good. See, this study's main point is two things. One, that books often banned are later unbanned. And two, that some of these books weren't literally banned, but rather restricted. The latter is a semantics game, obviously. It's like the lowest form of argument that ignores all context, and coincidentally something conservatives love to use, as discussed in our semi-recent episode about some guy. But yeah, if a book is restricted, meaning that you have to get it special from behind a desk or an adult section of a library, it's not technically banned.
Okay, why can't I make that
But
shot?
it's being made harder for kids to access freely and without having to go to an adult. So if a kid, for example, felt a tad bit gay, but didn't want to tell everyone about it, they're probably way less comfortable finding literature if it means talking to their, perhaps, conservative and or abusive parents. That's what this is about. Making information and learning freely available for kids without permission. Allowing a kid to find a book while browsing and discover something about themselves or the world. And even when you temporarily ban a book, you are not only suppressing the sales of that book, but closing that window for kids.
I'm not in a pinball
So yeah,
winning
this is all to say that this study about the book ban mirage is, in itself, some kind of fake image. A fake image. What's the word? It's like if you were in the desert, you saw something that wasn't real. They named a desert-themed casino after it?
Okay, yeah, we're done.
Sure.
I'm done.
Anyway,
that was too much.
that's the nuts and
Watching
bolts
that was
of
too
book
much for me.
bans. But it's also worth talking about the history of them, because learning is, it says here, fun. That might be a typo. It's more that there's a certain pattern to book bans we need to point out. In some ways, book bans are pretty new, but in other ways, they are the opposite of new.
Okay.
In conclusion, America is a land of contrasts, etc. The US actually started banning books more than a century before there was a US. The first migrants from jolly old England sprinted off their sailboats in feverish search of books to ban, it seems. In that they banned Native American culture in the sense that they destroyed their oral history and art and customs and, people. Then they kept searching for bold new books to ban. Was a book being black in Jamestown, Virginia? No. Was a book being gay underneath Plymouth Rock?
I had it for a second,
no.
but I was
Although
making
if it
shots.
was, that's totally the book version of a power bottom.
I wasn't thinking
Instead,
about it. I wasn't
in the
overthinking
year
them
1650,
like I am right
there was a
now.
guy named William Pynchon who lived in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He used a bird quill or block printer or whatever to write and publish The Meritorious Price of Our Redemption. This was a pamphlet about theology that basically said that anyone could get into heaven so long as they follow Christian teachings, which was apparently Marxist lib crap, because the colony's Puritan Calvinist majority thought God was a little more picky than that. Pynchon was called a heretic, and his pamphlet was banned and burned. This is considered the first book ban in what would become a United States. That pamphlet ban and pamphlet burning was cruel. It was also effective. Only 4 copies of that pamphlet survive today. You've never heard of William Pynchon unless you're a dweeb. His ideas died with his burned and banned pamphlet. And this sort of word lockdown continued and ramped up after we created a United States and a Constitution and a First Amendment. Oh, if you thought the First Amendment would have, like, prevented book bans, well, you are just adorable. Turns out, Americans shit-canned most of the Constitution's rights and freedoms as soon as possible, starting with our second president. Of course, that choice to can human values before the 1700s even ended is less weird when you remember our first president. That guy was so bloodthirsty, the native Seneca people nicknamed him their language's word for town destroyer, like he's a fucking Thor villain. Also, don't try to paint a mural of our first president doing those crimes and other crimes, because a school board will order you to cover that mural up, even if none of the facts in the mural are inaccurate. Hoo boy, America. Moving on to the mid-1800s, and southern states banned everything from abolitionist handbills to the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, I guess in hopes that they could keep plantation slavery going if nobody read criticisms of it. And if you live in a northern state, I need you to not get all smug about this. I know that's hard for you. But in 1873, the northern-dominated post-Civil War federal government passed a law called the Comstock Act, which stayed on the books for more than 60 years. Comstock Act banned 2 things: mailing any obscene, lewd, or lascivious book, pamphlet, picture, paper, print, and any article or thing designed or intended for the prevention of conception or procuring of abortion. Ah, shucks. More like the Comstock Act. Ooh, yeah. Prevention of conception? Better not send any pictures of JD Vance, am I right? Zynga! Oh, that dude dries the canals faster than the Dust Bowl. Bakowza! But seriously, JD Vance's image makes your genitals ineffective, okay? He also would have loved this act, which included a ban on any information on how to get contraception or an abortion. That was the Comstock Act. Also, is the Comstock Act? Because when I said that JD would love this act, I wasn't speculating. He and his boss have considered and are considering bringing some version of this back. Cool. You see how the history of stuff kind of matters? You'd think 200-year-old laws shouldn't matter, but they do. After all, book bans have largely been enacted by bigots who think they can slow down progress by censoring any mention of it. In 1959, Alabama banned a book called The Rabbit's Wedding because one rabbit in it had white fur and the other rabbit in it had black fur. Now, okay, you might think that this is some elevated Jordan Peele-ass metaphor children's story about mixed-race relationships. But I read it. For some reason, I read the book. It's just about rabbits. It's like 20 pages about rabbits. It's 2 rabbits getting married that happen to be different fur colors, and that terrified people. And sure enough, 8 years later, the Supreme Court would legalize heterosexual interracial marriages. The Rabbit's Wedding was inadvertently predicting the future, and the bigots subconsciously knew it and feared it. I'm guessing that most of us can't even imagine what it's like to be upset over interracial marriage or rabbits.
Yeah, I'm way
but
too
for
early on
Alabama
it.
State
Crazy.
Senator E.O. Edens, this book was propaganda for integration and intermarriage and should be taken off the shelves and burned.
It's done. We're done.
Imagine that.
We're moving on.
Imagine someone being furious and wanting to burn a book about 2 bunnies wanting to have a bunny wedding. I mean, it's a sham wedding because animals have no souls, except my dog, but the gesture is nice.
Okay,
also, souls don't exist. Or if they do,
Simulator,
I don't know what this character thinks anymore about anything. Point is, this is just one sad little dude trying desperately to paddle backward on the river of progress. And yet, not a single lesson would be learned from this. Sad little dudes continue to try and ban and control books as if that'll keep kids from being gay or trans or like aware of slavery or racism. We've done it for so long. Alabama schools forced their classes to use history
I also forgot
textbooks
that World War
that
Z
said
and
good
Daisy
things about
aren't the same
slavery
thing.
well into the
I'm
1970s.
just not interested
In
in this kind
freaking
of property, I guess. I don't
2018,
know.
7 years
I
ago,
barely watched
a
Walking
group of
Dead.
San
This is
Antonio
horrible. This
parents
is
noticed their
horrible.
children doing homework that required them to make a
Oh, wait, you know, I said I was
balanced
gonna do South
view
Park. I don't
of
wanna do- I
human
don't wanna do
slavery.
zombies. I don't care about the
Literally,
zombie thing.
making them
I bought the
list
table.
positive
I'm never gonna play
aspects
it.
of enslaving another race. And in 2012, a Georgia school gave out math homework with a word problem where you had to multiply how many beatings a slave got if you expand a beating rate of 2 beatings per day
Oh, I
across
see.
a longer time frame.
Why would they be in my favorites?
Oh God, that might be the most insidious one. It's just so casual. Like the slave beatings are just incidental units
it
like
couldn't be
eggs
that.
or pizza slices.
Totally.
Not to mention that it's
My
being
mind is
used
totally
for
out.
math,
I couldn't
something
do
that
that. It's
already
preventing me from
sucks.
playing these games
Imagine
well.
taking racist math,
Oh, you know what?
slave
Why am I
whip
in this?
algebra 101, calculating
has to be some
how the
other
path of
reason.
that lash could match a sine wave for a trigonometry demo. Sorry, bad tangent. So we're just making math jokes now? That's really who we want to be? Who even gave you a math book, monkey? Anyway, my point here is that historically, book bans have always been silly and sad and embarrassing. Basically, any book where human beings show empathy has been threatened. Huckleberry Finn, The Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird, and The Canterbury Tales. Yes, The Canterbury Tales. Apparently, a set of pranks and fart jokes among Catholic monks really freaked people out. We should, of course, mention the 1950s, when the Red Scare's right-wing authoritarians targeted anything that felt Marxist to them. McCarthyites also attempted a more fundamental reshaping of American education by going after civics textbooks and history textbooks. They accused those textbooks of devious crimes, like acknowledging that Franklin Delano Roosevelt existed and had been president recently, for more terms than anybody else in history.
I can't take it
McCarthyites
anymore.
also accused textbooks of being a Stalinist plot to unite the world under one globalist government if they mentioned that the United Nations just got founded. Again, embarrassing. Always embarrassing. That's kind of the point here. Nobody
God,
has
that's
looked
so
back and said,
annoying.
"Ooh, I'm so glad that book was banned." There are no book banning heroes, especially not now. While modern book bans share most of the same weenie shit we just talked about, they are a tad different.
I might have to turn
For
the
starters,
voiceovers
today's
down.
book banners have a fixation on targeting
Not
new
because I
stuff.
don't like South
What I
Park,
mean
it's
is
just
that book
like,
bans
yeah,
of
that's
the
fucking
past
annoying.
often targeted older books, even for that time. But almost every
The con
modern
is
book
way too
ban
long.
demonizes a contemporary book. Don't get me wrong, they still play the hits. Toni Morrison continues to do Hall of Fame band numbers for her 1970s thought crime. Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn enjoys a special status as a target because it both prints the N-word a lot and criticizes the beliefs of people who wish they were allowed to say that word. But beyond those outliers, modern book banners only want to crush new books. According to PEN America, in the 2021 to 2022 school year, 7 of the top 10 most banned books in America were published in 2015 or later. And out of more than 1,000 books banned that year, almost half of them were young adult fiction. This is far more insidious for one very simple reason.
Oh, cool, thank
These
you.
are the books that kids actually want to read. Like Catcher in the Rye, who gives a shit? What is that even about? Baseball? Bread? Shooting a guy? But by going after modern fiction, these adults are cutting kids off from the new culture they most likely want to be a part of, because those adults don't have any better culture to offer instead. It's indoctrination, very clear and simple. It's also especially harmful to kids without the socioeconomic wealth to buy those fun new books. Another way book bans are different now is that technology makes it way more efficient to do. We mentioned almost all of Florida's book bans come from 2 people, one being New York's least favorite son, Bruce Friedman. The other Florida book ban all-star is an Escambia County school teacher named Vicky Baguette. who apparently uses her downtime to scour libraries for sexy passages she can read to school boards.
Let's talk about some new porn books that I can still find so easily. Once and Future at West Florida High. Gwen was naked, chest heaving, curling fingers into Ari's hair while her legs trembled, and that's pubic hair, by the way.
Oh, cool. Thanks for clearing up that hair thing.
I'm sorry.
Vicky Baguette,
I think
or
kids should be
Baguette,
able
I
to
don't know.
learn
I
this
don't
kind of
care.
thing.
Has tremendous concern.
Like, especially at the ages they're talking, like high school. Like,
and in all
this kind of puritanism is bullshit. I
178
don't give
of
a
her
shit. I'm
complaints
sorry.
has stated that she read each book in its entirety.
I lost my virginity
and
when I
yet,
was
this
13,
astute
like, straight
literary
up.
critic was
Like,
literally
more
just
education might have
copy-pasting her
prevented me from actually
concerns from a
doing that.
website called Book Looks. A book banner who doesn't like to write their own thoughts? Who would have thought it? If you're wondering, Book Looks has no content beyond flagging titles for objectionable content, including profanity, nudity, and sexual content. They're nothing but a literary hall monitor and the perfect resource for anyone who wants to ban books and doesn't read. And this is how a few people can bang out all these bans. Not because they are passionate readers, but ideological trolls. As writer Tom Lay observed for Defector.com in 2025, our nation's cranks used to have to do a lot of labor, printing physical leaflets, calling landline phones, mailing things through the US mail with stamps that probably have black people or queer people or manatees or some other woke group on them. I mentioned manatee stamps because you will love using them or receiving them. But these days, you don't need to do any of that. You can just sit in the bath, thumbing on your phone, running your thumbs through your phone's hair, pubic hair. And so we're past the point where it's 100% necessary for an astroturfed right-wing billionaire to drive something like book bans. The book ban germ has gone airborne. Don't get me wrong, that's in part because of larger groups making that happen.
Come on.
Like, it should be noted that
man.
Book Looks is
Why is
shutting
my
down.
ability
And according to the
read
site,
that is
that's
really
because,
bad right now.
quote,
I need to stop trying
God
to do
called
it.
us to this work in 2022, but after much prayer and reflection, it has become apparent that his work for us here is complete and that he has other callings for us. God, famous hater of books. Of course, when they say God has other callings for them, I'm pretty sure they actually mean conservative dark money, because it turns out that Book Looks was founded by a member of Moms for Liberty named Emily Makish. You know Moms for Liberty, right? We've certainly talked about them enough. Short explanation is that they are not really for liberty, nor are they a small group of moms so much as a Heritage Foundation-funded political tool. Emily Makish claims that Moms for Liberty has nothing to do with booklooks.org. It's just, I guess, incidental to those other enthusiastic, coordinated anti-democratic book bans led by that group. Moms for Liberty bans so many books in so many districts. They're now banning new books about the topic of book bans in clear retaliation against people who've done journalism against book bans. Moms for Liberty, folks, who helped Bruce Friedman ban the illustrated version of the Diary of Anne Frank from his local Florida schools, and coincidentally, sent out a newsletter titled with the quote, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." That is a Hitler quote. They quoted Hitler in an aspirational way. And I'm not sure why I do this, but putting aside the Hitler of that quote, it's still very telling. They are stating very clearly that they are trying to own the youth in order to manipulate the future. This is not, as they love to pretend to be, a handful of concerned parents. This is a funded and coordinated political movement of indoctrination. This is why a lot of America's local and state book bans are carbon copies of each other. Remember those Pen America stats from the beginning of the episode? Many of the book bans Penn totaled up in 2023 and 2024 were bans of the same books in new places. Book banners aren't avid readers. They're not banning from a place of fandom. They're hopping on the suburban mom version of 8chan, run by Republican operatives, to find the next title somebody's passing around for banning. It's so clearly not about the books themselves, but rather a broad push against the libs. Remember Matt Krause? That Texas legislator who asked every library in Texas if they circulate any of his least favorite 850 books? It should be noted that he didn't explain why he picked those books, and in fact, he and his aides have refused any opportunity to talk about it. Do you think he read all those books? There's actually a very telling detail in his list, which is mostly made up of left-leaning or diverse authors or ideas. You know, a book that opposes book burning by an author who happened to be gay, or a book that describes the history and origins of quinceañeras by a scholar who happens to be Mexican and Jewish. But there's one thrilling exception, a book titled Cynical Theories: How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and Why This Harms Everybody. That book is actually a right-wing critique of leftist language. You might recognize one of the embarrassing authors, James Lindsay. Because this book critiques leftist language, that means it also uses a lot of lefty words as an example. And so Matt Krause wants to ban it. So it sure looks like this Texas legislator, or whichever billionaire's employees wrote his list for him, compiled it by doing a Control-F search for any words they didn't like, and this one got flagged with all the rest. That's it. You might recognize this as the Doge method, or the Trump method, whichever you prefer. They don't read books, of course they don't. They don't care about their context. They are just trying to erase words they think are dangerous to their political goals. It's so sad and obvious, and luckily doesn't appear to be working as well as they'd like it to. That said, it is working enough to suck. And so, after the break, we're gonna talk more about
Am I going the
that.
totally
But
wrong
first,
way or the totally
ads,
right way? I can't tell.
capitalism. If you write the word capitalism in a book, there's a decent chance a Texas
genuinely forgot
legislator
where I
will
am right
accidentally ban it. But here,
Like, I know, like,
we
on
are
the
free.
map, but just orienting myself. Like,
Rick
I don't know.
Perry, watch
Oh,
him.
well, that
He's
works.
a summer of cinema. That's right. The summer of cinema keeps on choogling along. When will it end? Who can say? You'll never want it to end, though, with some of these hot action titles they've got over on Pluto TV. Movies you know and love, like Gladiator, Beverly Hills Cop, Tamagotchi Death Squad, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, The Ancient Manticore Assassins, Good Burger, McGruff Opens the Trench Coat, rated NC-17, Plug and Play with Kid and Play, Shazam, the Sinbad Genie movie they finally just ended up making, Four Brothers, Star Trek, Tar Shrek, Stranger Things, The College Years, a prequel,
Gotta do my Bartitsu.
Bulletproof
Hey, let's
Giraffe,
put on a
Tango
Bartitsu
and Cash
outfit
2,
too,
It Takes
just
Two
for the
to
hell of
Cash
it.
and Tango, and Stealth. Bring the action with you and stream for free on all
guess-
of your
I mean,
favorite
this kinda works
devices.
here.
Pluto TV, stream now, pay never. Four Brothers. Welcome back to all, even the leftist scum who hate America. We were talking about the history of losers trying to ban books and how it's exactly like the losers still trying to ban books, with the exception of today's losers
That
being
sounded
part of a
loud in my ears.
concerned
That
and
might-
ideological
never mind.
effort
Forget
made
it.
possible by the magic of the World Wide Web. And while so far book bans in America have often been reversed and don't seem particularly effective at holding back progress, they certainly aren't harmless.
There's a building
At
near me that's
best,
done
they
with
are
this
a waste of
architectural
everyone's
style
time
in
and money,
Dallas.
more than you might realize. In Texas alone, recent legal challenges to 1,470 books were projected to
It's like
cost
white and
taxpayers
very
at
glass.
least
Like, it's all
$3.6
white and
million
glassish looking.
in
It's a
book
really
cop
beautiful building,
costs
though.
and administrative time suck. Florida school districts spend roughly one staff salary worth of money every year to comply with book ban laws. But at worst, these bans are directly hurting kids and libraries, even before there is a ban. Book bans hurt libraries just by existing. As we mentioned before, there are tons of examples of libraries yoinking books off their shelves ahead of possible bans, just to try to survive as a library and institution and source of local jobs. Before Texas legislator Matt Krause got any actual laws passed, a San Antonio school district ordered the removal of 400
Our
books
legislator
from their
is-
shelves.
it's
They
insane.
self-censor
We're
and
insane here. I don't know
pre-comply
what's going
in
on.
hopes of
I gotta
protecting
get
their
outta here.
funding and their time from their state's predatory
Gotta get out of
government.
Texas as soon
How's
as
that for a
possible, to be honest.
Mirage Education Freedom Institute? Mirage! It's Mirage. I knew I would remember, and I finally did. It's Mirage. That's the word. I digress. Remember, in at least one state, they put bounties on libraries that anyone can
No,
collect.
fuck.
There is a fear in the air.
I thought it was Guardian.
Libraries are
but I guess
already
it got me
having to
still.
deal with Doge-brained dildos who think every public service needs to make a profit. They certainly don't need the added stress. So Texas administrators are trying to stop the bleeding by taking Dr. Seuss and Judy Blume off shelves before anyone forces them, which they eventually did anyway, of course. Pre-removing books, by the way, artificially deflates the statistics on how many books America bans. You gotta wait until you're forced. You gotta get those Seuss numbers up.
Oh, I have a lot of
Librarians
fucking
in
souls.
many
I wonder
other
how many I need
states
to
are
level up.
self-banning
I didn't
in
pay
another
attention.
way by adding potentially bannable books to their usual process for culling old and worn-out books. In regular times, in a good society, libraries
they go?
actually destroy lots of books. Library books physically wear out after all. They get smelly or get moldy. Pages get torn out to make
Where's all my
blots.
enemies go?
Other books get weeded out, pun intended, for being an obsolete edition. All of that's good. It's good practice to pulp or even gulp burn those books. But a lot of librarians are starting to sneak books like And Tango Makes Three into their pile of weeded and culled books. Even though that gay penguin book is so new, you might remember it being in the news because people got mad about it. Oh hey, kinda reminds you of that interracial rabbit book, doesn't it? In that a bunch of people freaked out about natural social progress as told via cute animals, even though even the bunny one wasn't even about it, but this penguin one is. But again, animals don't have souls, all right? I want to make that clear.
It looks like it's all that, like, garden across,
Again, I'm
right?
confused about this character. But the point is, that book is the only one we know about because of a lawsuit. There are no doubt scores of libraries quietly self-banning books by using this loophole. And while that does seem cowardly and shitty to do, for some librarians, this is simply an act of self-preservation.
Parents and educators packed into the theater of the North Hunterdon and Voorhees Regional High School for the latest school board meeting and hurled harsh words at administrators and librarians over a handful of books on library shelves.
Police escorted him outside. Moments later, he left quietly. The controversy over embattled school librarian Martha Hickson and her refusal to yank illustrated sex ed books like Let's Talk About It off the shelves highlighted a deep divide.
Yep, nothing more American than a violent dude wearing a Punisher skull while shaking hands with the cops after threatening a sweet old librarian lady for trying to provide kids sex education. So, one of the other consequences to book bans is that a lot of librarians are getting called pedophiles for putting books on shelves and wearing cardigans and otherwise doing their jobs. You call someone a pedophile for being a decades-long best friend of a convicted pedophile and sex trafficker who was sent a weird pedophile birthday card from the person you're calling a pedophile, not for cardigans. And man, it's just so sad. Imagine furiously raging at a fucking librarian. What kind of upbringing and ideology leads someone to that? This is all sad. No other word. These people are sad. There's no nice way to say this, but assuming they aren't just racists or political operatives, the people pushing for book bans are ultimately just people who don't understand books or nuance or context or learning. There's a general anti-intellectualism and an anti-art movement in this country. And it's being led by people who simply feel challenged by
you have to
complex
realize when you're
ideas
dealing
and
with
lack the humility to just shut the
intellectualism,
f up.
you can't
Going back to
argue
Bruce
against
Friedman
it.
and his
That
efforts
defeats
to
the
ban the
like as soon as you start to
illustrated
make logical
Anne
arguments,
Frank,
they're like,
his reasoning was,
you're
of
a fucking
course,
nerd.
because there
That's
was
it.
gay
That's where
stuff
we
in
are.
that book.
We're
He
at
went
that
out
level
and said in
of
public,
like caveman
quote,
beating
the fact that little
cavemen
Anne Frank
killing
once
the
had
people,
some lesbian
time traveling
thoughts
to help
that made
them.
their way into her
That's
diary.
That's it.
Does
You
that
know,
help
they're like,
a
oh
kid
no, they're
learn
coming
the
through a
horrors
weird
of
portal. Let's kill
Holocaust or
them. That's what's
inhumanity?
happening.
No. So what is it helping the kid learn? As far as I'm
whatever
concerned,
this thing is about
it's
to do
grooming.
to me, to kill me.
To be fair to this
It also
wiener,
sucks.
he only wanted to ban the illustrated version of the diary. Friedman
That didn't hit
went
it?
on
No,
to
it
tell
did.
that
Oh my
reporter
God.
that he
No, it's
actually
even worse, it
loves
did.
the book itself and was moved by the Diary of Anne Frank when he first read it as a
We're
9-year-old.
running.
But then he says his big takeaway from it is that our cruelty to each other comes from, quote, not just the Nazis, it's the human condition. Oh, so like, I don't want to be mean, but I think Bruce Friedman is just a stupid guy.
I can't deal with another
like,
thing at,
put
the
nicely,
at this moment.
a dumb f. He apparently read The Diary of Anne Frank, a book about only one child getting hunted and killed by only the Nazis, and no other characters except for some non-Nazis who protected Anne from
do I have to
Nazis
kill it
as
to make
best
this
they
go
could.
away? 'Cause that
And the
would
moral he
suck,
took
too.
from it was not just Nazis are bad, and he wants to ban a version of it because he thinks that the fact that Anne Frank was slightly bi-curious isn't relevant to the story about the Nazis, who specifically hated and slaughtered people for being gay, and therefore any images of that should be banned. I know hypocrisy is dead. 6 feet under. But it's incredible when you remember all the right-wing accusations of nanny state liberals policing words and giving out participation trophies and being overly inclusive. And then one empty trash bag stands up and declares that a book should be banned for everyone because it made him scared and confused. And yet, conservatives want to go off on trigger warnings? You know what trigger warnings don't do?
Ban things.
They don't ban the content.
Yeah.
Trigger warnings are not bans. They're pretty much just information. Banning books
they're
is more like a trigger
information
surrender.
about the content you're gonna see, just
Point is,
like an
these are
R
just
rating on a movie. It's
incurious,
basically
angry
like
people.
innocuous.
But because they are all so fucking loud about their ignorance, we apparently need to listen to and accommodate them. That's the thing. Beyond all the legal steps and school meetings and tedious paperwork, book banners share a common trait of never shutting the fuck up. Everybody banning books perceives themselves to be free speech warriors because they think free speech means forcing your speech on other people at all times. Ironically, the book banners are louder and stubborner than every author they're banning. If a district says Anne Frank matters for her Holocaust insights, a book banner turns around and says the problem is the lesbian stuff. If the school says one lesbian-ish thought isn't a thought crime, a book banner says the librarians are pedophiles. If the librarians aren't pedophiles, the book banner keeps saying it until the librarians quit their jobs in fear and the police have to restrain school board meeting attendees before shaking their hands in the hallway. There is a way to combat this, but unfortunately it requires work. I hate to sound like a bumper sticker here, but ignorance is contagious. These people are essentially pushing their ignorance on others by forcing libraries and schools to make kids as ignorant as they are. It's a cycle. Someone grows up with a textbook that says Jesus used dinosaurs to free the slaves, but the slaves were like, no thanks.
Wait, what?
And then that person demands that those textbooks stay in circulation. So the goal here is to stop the spread like any contagion. We got a Larry Fishburne this, baby! We need to push elected school board members and professional educators to update our curriculum. And the #1 way to do that is to relocate the power back to those people, and not some asshole from New York City who thinks his new Florida county, named for a slave owner by the way, is getting turned lesbian by libraries. So, hey you, yes you, with the hat, hey, have you ever thought about running for school board? Creepy cranks sure have, but also no one likes creepy cranks. So if you or someone you know runs against a creep crank, you might win. And then you can help improve the required books.
Damn, dude. I need to work on the parry timing for this. Another Crab's Tale made parry timing like
used a normal sounding
so
history
I focused
book
on it a
called
lot.
Prentice
This one,
Hall
it
Classics,
doesn't. I mean,
a
it's still
history
pretty
of the
important,
United
but it's
States.
just not
That book included this paragraph.
as
Quote,
important, I guess.
while there were cruel masters who maimed or even killed their slaves, although killing and maiming were against the law in every state, there were also kind and generous owners. The institution was as complex as the people involved. Though most slaves were whipped at some point in their lives, a few never felt the lash. Nor did all slaves work in the fields. Some were house servants or skilled artisans. Many may not have even been terribly unhappy with their lot, for they knew no other. Oh, neat. Wait a both sides of slavery school history book. See, okay, so some slaves, maybe, weren't terribly unhappy because they didn't know what it was like to not be a slave. Heck, you know what? Some slaves might have been merely pretty unhappy. That book never should have been in a classroom. And now it's not. The publishing company no longer prints it and actually uses that passage I quoted as an internal example of how not to cover slavery in future books. That, sadly, is a win. Your state and your district could do that same good thing for yourselves if necessary, because there's a lot more work to be done. For example, as of 2014, there were 14 US states spending tax dollars to teach creationist curriculum. That is the actual problem, not fucking gay penguin adoption. Let the gay penguins have a kid. It's fine. Another word for gay is happy. It's just happy feet. Calm the fuck down.
Right?
But if you can't run for school board because you're lazy or have a bunch of priors, there is one other big thing we can all do. We really need to normalize allowing experts and professionals and artists to do their jobs. Even before Trump, there's this weird growing push, perhaps related to the internet, where ignorant people seem to think that they should get a say in stuff they know nothing about. I know this sounds kind of mean, but I think it's important that we mock those people. I think it's important that ignorance is once again shameful so that those people might finally shut the fuck up and go read a book. This mockery can come in many, many fun ways. Back in 2011, for example, a publishing company released a censored version of Huckleberry Finn, replacing the N-word with slave. In response, a group of people created a robot edition of the book, as in replacing the black character Jim with a literal robot, in order to mock the idea of watering down the racism depicted in that story. Or more recently, down in Florida, this happened.
Movies like a film highlighting Ruby Bridges integrating schools and books like this one centering a same-sex penguin couple have come under scrutiny over the past few years after being flagged for being potentially inappropriate content. But now some Floridians have filed complaints that the Bible is full of inappropriate content.
That Bible ban is being supported by at least one pastor. The point obviously not being that the Bible is bad, but rather that book bans are. Old Ronnie DeSantis called this performative and fraudulent, without seeing the obvious irony that all book bans are those things. But it's a start, because as I keep saying, book bans are stupid weenie shit. That's why we shouldn't do them. For any reason. Like, there are a bajillion different conservative books published every year, often by large publishing houses who only print that viewpoint. There's no need to ban those books and make them seem cool or dangerous. We don't have to do it back to them. We can just mock them and support the books they are so scared of. Make it cool for kids to ignore book bans, which it already is. The writer of this episode co-hosted an entire podcast about the author Kurt Vonnegut. Like and subscribe, it's called Vonneguys, amazing title for a fantastic author. And that writer of this episode discovered Vonnegut in high school, specifically because one Vonnegut book was on a list of banned and otherwise interesting books. He read a Vonnegut novel called
Cat's Cradle, really?
Cradle, which is a worthwhile book about the apocalypse and humanity and admittedly some foot stuff. An Ohio school district
I was about to say, but I was like, really, they would ban that? That seems
back in
extreme.
1972. There were also many bans thrown at Vonnegut's novel Slaughterhouse-5. There was
See,
even
that
an
was
incident
my
when a
original
North
assumption.
Dakota school superintendent seized and burned dozens of copies of Vonnegut's work. That's a tragedy, but that's also notoriety and a powerful signal that those books contain something opposed by troglodytes. Without that infamy, this episode's writer might never have found his favorite writer. He's one of millions of kids who followed a book ban to intellectual freedom that ever happened or might apply to today. Oh my gosh, what if history applied to today? Book banners think you can fix the Holocaust by playing peekaboo with its memory. And of all the problems in America, book bans might be the one we're most able to solve with optimism and warmth, and choosing to not be an asshole unless you're mocking idiots. You know. Also, unless you want me to be an asshole, I can do that. I can be a complete piece of shit. I'll do it. Okay. Do you want me to do that? You want me to do that? Huh? Jeff Probst? Surprise, by the way. This is the entire video, this entire time. I'm so sorry. It's actually been an audition video for the CBS television show Survivor. I can be whichever personality you want, Jeff. I'll be a Puck. He's not from Survivor, but he was a famous asshole on a reality show. I'll be another person. Or another type of character. I don't really watch reality TV, but I want to be on it so bad. Whichever personality wins me the grand prize that is still $1 million,
Is like
even though
really
that's barely
specific.
money
You have to
now,
let
Jeff.
go of it.
It's not the
thrown
year
off my
2000
idea of like
anymore,
when to
Jeff.
parry, I think.
Our money inflated into near worthlessness, and iPhones exist, and you no longer have this face. Hell, I no longer have this face. I just need to win that $1 million, okay? Please, I just want to own a home before I die. Jeff, please. Jeff, please. Put me on your torment island, Jeff. I'll bring my own torch. Jeff.
Fuck me.
Need to bring my own
Come on.
torch. You know I was gonna say.
Ah.
It's fine. I'll bring my own torch.
Don't blow up.
Ow! 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 I'll... Ah! Do you think I'd be good on
gonna check
Survivor?
all the fucking doors. Just get over it.
I think I'd be good on Survivor. Ow!
Yeah.
Just give me $1 million. Hey everybody, real quick, I gotta go to the hospital.
doing serious training right now,
Just,
cutting
like
them
and
in
subscribe
half.
and leave a comment that's nice or mean or just
Nobody
give like
can beat me. Can
give
you
me
slide in
advice
this
on how
game?
to
I don't think you
use
can.
a lighter. And we've got a podcast called Even More News. You
I
can
don't
check
even
it out
know
on
what
this
the
channel
command
twice a
would be.
week or at the podcast place twice a week. And we have this show, Some More News,
There
as a
we go.
podcast. If you don't want to
But
see
yeah,
my
this is
survival
definitely a
skills
more
and
precisely
read your
timed
eyes,
parry than
you
another
just listen
Crowd's
to
Tale
it.
where you actually have to like
Oh, how are we
readjust
surviving?
it to
Thanks,
anticipate
guy.
a little bit.
See, it's all audio. We've got a
Another
patreon.com/some
Crowd's Tale.
more
I
news.
always say
We've
that.
also got merch with,
Instead of treasure.
you know, what you'd expect, which is merch. Surprise, there's merch at the merch store. We got all kinds of stuff. We got, you know,
Deal.
this, other stuff. I didn't really burn my hand, but
Okay.
you knew that, obviously. Wait, I got it. Okay. The Aristocrats.
Wow, really? I thought I would throw that. Oh, that was me being stupid. I'm sorry. Oh, throwing. The one that says throwing is probably the one that you throw. Ah. Alright, okay. I don't.
We are back, and we are joined now by Catherine Houghton, KFF Health.
I'm in the mood for something more interesting right now. That's interesting.
News Month.
You know, I never finished the last part of the Lindsay Ellis, Miss Rachel. Alright, I'm done. I don't know who this is. I've never watched a video from them before, but I put them in the thing just to check out something new.
This story is more than just about me. It's more than kneecap. This is a story about Palestine.
I hate Netanyahu.
We have to defend free speech and freedom of protest. We will not stand idly by and allow this man and others to be prosecuted without the
And
clear
others.
understanding that we do not stand for genocide.
Any people actually protesting what the government are actually doing, are in danger of being treated as terrorists.
Tell me about the sign that you've got here.
Well, I hate Netanyahu, and I decided I wanted something quite strong, and I think fuck you is pretty appropriate. I'd like to go harder, but I don't think the police will allow it.
Well, you can see from the background and the crowd, we've come here to support Mokara.
Well, no,
the
as
water?
a knee
Oh,
cap
yeah.
group.
Okay.
And the
Wait,
reason we're
whoa.
here is
Do I have to open
what
something up
our
here?
art today is going to be. Tell the truth. They use
Wait,
our
did I already
platform
open this up?
to call it out.
Am I just
to call
stupid?
out
Wait,
what's
no,
happening
this
in
is new.
Palestine. We show all the other
Oh,
groups that
I
have
see.
platforms do something about it and
Oh,
have the
shit,
balls
this
like
is it. This is the
Mo
moment.
Farah and kneecap.
Okay, I'm gonna
also,
play
we're
this Zelda
here
style.
because
I'm gonna open
this
it
is
up
an
before I
attack
find
on
it.
free speech. What you're seeing here today
Let it go
is
by.
an attack on free
Let the
speech.
guard walk by.
Even Section 14
Metal Gear
imposed
Solid
on us.
style.
We were here 6 weeks
stealth
ago
is stealth.
at the last cape.
Ocarina
and it
of
was
Time. I was
perfect.
thinking the
There's no
Ocarina of Time
trouble
guard.
whatsoever.
You know,
Late
fuck
on
it, who
Monday, they
cares?
served a notice on a
Shut up.
Section 14. Restricts us to an area. They put our stage out by the road when our stage was in there by the wall the last day. We'll carry on. We're all denies and we're good to go. So, free speech, I suppose, is the issue. And we have to defend free speech and freedom of protest.
We're here in
Let it pass
big numbers
by and
for
then
the
just
second
open
time
the
now to
door.
show solidarity with
So I know I have a
Raymond
clear
Gohani,
playback.
Mokara from NECAP, who is being brought before the criminal courts in London by the British state, really over what himself and the band have been doing, which is shining a light on the genocide that has been unfolding before our eyes for nearly 2 years now in Gaza. So we are here in solidarity, we're here in one voice to make it very clear that we will not stand idly by and allow this man and others to be prosecuted without the clear understanding that we do not stand for genocide and that we do not stand for inaction. I think it's not just Keir Starmer, it's Western global leaders. It's those who have and continue to enable a genocide. It's those who, with weak words on one hand, and yet on the other hand, they continue to arm, they continue to provide political cover for Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, who murders on a daily basis, whether that's children, whether that's those seeking food, whether that's journalists, whether that's aid workers, whether that's civilians. I mean, I don't have long enough to go through the list of those who they continue to kill with absolute impunity. So the frustration, the anger, the direction of the protest, I think today and on other days, is very firmly against those people who do have the ability to make a difference, but who choose not to.
Well, I just think what NECAP did, and people like Bob Villan, came in just at the right time. I think people were feeling really down about what's the genocide that's going on in Gaza, and NECAP have brought it to the forefront.
Hey, would you like
and
to
got
meet my
young people
umbrella?
involved in it, and I think that's really important for the
Oh,
Palestinians
chap.
that they know that they have the mass support
damn.
of people in this country, which I believe they do.
Okay, it doesn't
Even
stagger
though
at
our
all. It
government
has no
refuses
stagger function.
support the people of Palestine and to stop the genocide.
I think what's happening with
It does
NECAP,
a little bit,
especially
but
being,
that was horrible.
terrorism legislation and things like that. It's just so obvious that there's these
I'm gonna win the game.
draconian measures
I'm gonna have
being
to do
put
like
in
a
place
new
to
game
silence
where I just
down
use the
free
umbrella
debate
and that's
silence
it.
down peaceful protest. And I've never actually seen
Full
anyone.
Bartitsu,
I mean, we've had political protest
playthrough.
musicians before, but I've never seen anyone getting in trouble for terrorism charges. And it just shows that a corrupt, broken system, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be a major talking point in history in the future. What I think a problem with the left is working class voices haven't been in the left for a long time. So people who throw.
Wait, what? What do I have over here? Madonna. The prima donna. Oh, Donna, oh, Donna, oh, Donna, oh, looking for Madonna. Fucking get Bartitsu, dude. Oh, Donna, oh, Donna, oh, Donna. Hello, good sir. Oh! I'm sorry I had to muddy you like that. Okay, well, that's fun. I didn't. Oh, hello. Wait, I've already given her her thing, right? Oh my god, no. Thank god.
Distinctive shade of red. You young one. Every step is a struggle when you have the petrification disease. But this.
I guess there's like a kind of irony, right, to the whole game that like you're becoming a real person while the real people are getting a petrification disease that makes them into quote-unquote dolls, right? You know? It's like a kind of irony. You know, I might drop the news and stuff. Well, hold on, I would have to set up the chat cable. Actually, you know, I wouldn't have to. I would just not have to listen anymore. Hold on. Gonna cover the last few things I really care about. Not cover, but you know, listen to them for myself.
Speaking of perhaps performative outrage and failure of Western journalists, Clarissa Ward released a video that people have been talking about. And so I want to give you the chance, Abu Bakr especially, to react to it. So let's take a look. And she, of course, is a CNN journalist.
I woke up this morning to the horrific news that Anas al-Sharif, the Al Jazeera journalist, and 3 of his colleagues were killed in a
I hate it. Jesus Christ. You did like a whole, like, she's literally done one of the most shameful, like, staged, like, she fell for just like a completely staged performance. Maybe her opinions on this sort of topic shouldn't be, like, valued very highly.
A lot of Western journalists when I say that so many of us feel angry and outraged and
she's clearly very susceptible to narratives.
And ashamed. We are confronted with a stream of accusations from the IDF that seek to dehumanize our Palestinian colleagues, that seek to justify their killings, and the nature of the carefully calibrated language that we are using in our stories, I understand to many just feels so detached and so
oh wait, I already killed that thing, so that's why it's not coming. Okay.
To the agony and outrage.
I was like, where's the ball?
The moment. And behind the scenes, many of us continue to push and press and sign letters and write petitions and do meetings, and none of it seems to make a damn bit of difference.
Hello.
So, just a
how you do,
reminder,
Chup? Ow, damn. Okay, chaps. I'll see how it is.
And that the targeting
you know a fan of me, I get it.
Is
we can't be friends.
Okay, of
but
course.
maybe we could be allies. Just kidding, I'm gonna kill you.
Is a war crime, but what are your thoughts on
you call that a kill?
He justified these war crimes.
Okay.
Early in the genocide. So what?
Okay, hey babies. Okay, whoa.
Like she pretended she did.
Y'all are a little too crazy.
An active play in occupied Palestine, claiming that Hamas was firing rockets at there. And she talked about.
I gotta switch out of Bartetsu mode for a second.
During the first days of the genocide, and that was enough for Israel to kill many Palestinians. And also, I just want to ask, why is she speaking up right now? Why didn't she defend?
So I gave her the wine. Where do I go now?
When the claims and the threats against him were made, Why did she act? Why did she have to wait until he
I
got
could have
killed to speak
danced
up?
all
It's very
night.
performative, very, very performative. And again, as a Palestinian, I will never care about her voice, because simply, do you want me to forgive someone who has justified killing many of my people? Of course not. All of this is performative. All of this. Well, if she's honest, by the way, she would have quitted CNN a long time ago, right? Why is she staying?
I think I should actually go the
A
other
lot of
way,
other
but I'm
journalists,
just
Singita, she's in
seeing
the
what's
UK. She has
going on here.
resigned from LBC. She was fired because she challenged an Israeli official, someone with a conscience, with a piercing moral clarity, with a sense of moral clarity, but if quitted a place that has been justifying the Holocaust of our time and giving consent for this.
Aw, no, right before I used the heal too. I would have lived if I'd healed.
It's just a performative scene. She wants to climb up the mountains upon the pain of our people. Yeah, and everyone seems now.
Fucking forgot about those guys.
Now have been against it.
Those explosive
It's untrue. They
bursts.
want to wash their hands of their complicity.
To be fair though, I think I'm at the
for us,
point now
this
where
is
I don't need to level up
unthinkable,
anymore. Like I'm definitely at
unthinkable,
like
and
a scale
we have
where
to see them held accountable. And that's
leveling up
something
more is a lost cause.
I'm
I need to just focus on getting
I just want to
further
say
into the
Clarissa
game.
Ward is not powerless. She's one of the most famous journalists in the world.
Not a lost cause, it would just take a long
Palestinians
time.
do not need world-famous journalists to work behind the scenes. They need them to put their jobs on the line and resign in protest. That's what they need. So, you know, when I was at RT and Russia annexed Crimea, I put my job on the line. And I told my boss, if I can't say this on air, I'm walking. Where is that integrity? Where's the dignity? Where's the self-respect? To come out almost 2 years into a genocide after the performative nonsense she did on the ground in Palestine, to come out almost
I
2
just
years later
doubt
and
that
say
like
targeting
a bunch of
journalists is a
like
war
those
crime. Look, all
metal
the
the
calibrated
framework
language that
busting
you see
out
is
would
so
really
detached.
affect people.
Yeah,
like
no
I'm talking about
shit.
Bartetsu right
It's
now. I know in the
detached. Why aren't
game
you
it's just
challenging
extreme.
that?
It's
Why aren't you
magical.
pushing out in front? Imagine the respect that she would get if she resigned.
But I bet that's a
in
real Bartetsu
protest.
move, and I'm like, why do you
Because
think that would work?
anything
They would
less
just be like,
than that is
get this. I guess it would.
enabling
It would
the
work.
propaganda
It would
and
work in
laying
a
the
few
groundwork
situations.
for genocide, Clarissa. You are complicit unless you quit. All of the work behind the scenes is meaningless. No one cares
But they would
about
have to be
that.
hyper
What we
specific
care
and
about is what
unlikely to
you
ever
say
happen, and it wouldn't be
up
worth
front
like
in the
practicing
public
them.
eye. So what is it? What's it going to be? I mean, all of this is just a disgrace.
It is. I agree.
No
Also,
way.
I mean, it's also rich.
I
to
thought
see
it was gonna
people
blow up
who
farther
were
away from me. I
okay
died in the
with
same spot. I'm
genocide
so
Until
stupid.
basically it started, until Israel engaged in a mass starvation campaign. They were fine with the violence, with the starvation when it was kind of more below the surface. It was an acceptable level of starvation. They were fine with the rapes of Palestinian hostages. Of course, they call them prisoners. They were fine with all of that. It's only when it's stuff that's done to children, which of course is a crime. I mean, it's horrifying, but it had to be, like you were saying, Abu Bakr, like the perfect victims, right? So they were only, now some people are finally speaking out, but only, I would say, because children are being starved. So you can't even pretend that that's about October 7th or Hamas, whereas everything else they were able to pretend was about October 7th and Hamas.
Well, but October the 7th, October the 7th was a retaliatory attack that Israel has done for this.
No, I'm just to explain. I'm saying that that's their framing of it, right? Like they were able to pretend everything.
I understand, but I mean, like, honestly, like, anybody bringing up the Hamas thing point is an idiotic person who knows nothing and who's a cheap sellout. That's how it is.
A sellout. I mean, in some cases they're not even sellouts because they don't even pretend to. I mean,
Wait,
sellouts
did I
is like
pass
the
it?
best
I
that
forgot where
they
it
are.
was.
The worst
Damn
is
it.
that they
Where's my?
recruit
I wish I had a map.
Racist Zionists who aren't even sellouts.
Where's my body?
I mean, you're right, but I'm just saying, like, there are no
They
words.
should be pro-Palestine.
There are no words. A lot of people, and I have to say this out loud at the moment because I'm aware of this, but many of our allies are our enemies. And I think Abby can agree with me on this. Many of our allies are our enemies.
Can you elaborate on that?
I mean, many are profiting from the genocide. They're pretending to be pro-Palestinian, but they're profiting from the genocide. Many are trying to, I mean, they're trying to dehumanize the Palestinians, but in a different way. And I've received this myself, that a lot of people have contacted me just to act as a polite boy, as they say, because that's how we need to address the West. So we have to to kneel to the Western Empire just to address our rights. But that's something Gaza has been doing for many, many years. We've been calling on the international community to help them get any kind of human rights in Gaza for October the 7th. Nothing happened. Then this defensive attack happened on
They want
October
to do
the
that?
7th.
Okay, we're back here.
But after that, no one talked about it, and we've become the most vile people on the planet, and everybody took it. And now we're seeing people opening up on genocidal rhetoric, like Congressman in Florida has in fine his name.
Right.
Yeah, just you said new Gaza before, no accountability, no charges, nothing. But imagine if a Palestinian person said that. The Israeli ministers, officials are always opening up on genocide rhetoric, saying there's not a single human being in Gaza. There are animals, and all of them are are not innocent. They are all involved in war crimes. They all support Hamas. They haven't shown
Moving
any
on.
kind of support for the Israeli prisoners, whatever, and that's how the narrative is being. And unfortunately, Western media, but I'm sure both of you are aware of that, until now, Abby, even if they are pretending and masquerading as pro-Palestinians at the moment, but until now, see the Western media outlets, see the number of Israelis who are being platformed, and the number of Palestinians who are being platformed, and this can tell you they will never change. Someone who's being racist, who is racist towards the other races and towards Palestinians will never change. Someone who's been complicit will never wash his hands of their complicity. And those people are anti-genocide but pro-apartheid. You know what I mean?
Oh wait, oh no. Was that a teaser? Was that a teaser trailer? I can't take it. I can't take it. What the fuck?
If you're an American, you If you're an American, you've been probably seeing a whole bunch of these things. And in some places, they're so common that you don't even notice them. They just blend into the background like they're trees or streetlights. And you've probably correctly assumed that they're recording traffic. They're also recording and logging license plates and using AI image recognition. But what if I told you that they are...
I wanted to do more of a deep dive on Taylor Lorenz. I might do that after this video. And also, if this keeps happening, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Shouldn't happen. What the fuck? Hold on.
Are in fact not owned by your local police department or your local government, but are licensed to them by a third-party startup. And all of your vehicle's whereabouts are being tracked by a third-party data broker. What if...
Hold on. Hey, that's me. I don't care what other people think about Taylor Lorenz. I'm a stan. Like, I don't even care about her other opinions. Like, the things that she talks about them so well that I love her. Like, I don't think her little more extreme positions on, like, COVID precautions and stuff, like, warrant anything against her. I'm a total stan. This is the one I didn't. I was just this kind of slipped through the cracks for me. I wanted to go back and watch it. You know, it's like one of those things where it's like, well, do I need to hear about this compared to everything else going on?
they sent out a letter saying that
After this one, I
this
put a
product
book on
may
or
or may
something, I
not
don't
be
know.
safe.
I don't
So
know
we were
about-
stuck with
I'm
$30
streaming on
million
YouTube
of
now too, right?
inventory
So,
that we
like,
had to destroy.
I don't know if I just play like an
overnight.
audiobook from Audible.
Four
Legally, I
Loko
don't
was
know what'll
one of
happen.
the first brands to ever go viral. With its dizzying mix of alcohol and caffeine, it skyrocketed
But
to
I guess
success in the 2000s
Amazon
and
didn't do
became an
anything when I
iconic
was doing
American
it. I don't
beverage
think it'll
brand
matter
overnight.
unless I have
The
like more
brand
people
understood
watching.
internet culture before the internet was even mainstream. But
I
that
might just do it
virality came at a
anyways.
cost.
Illegally
The company
play
suffered
books.
government crackdowns, a media moral panic. They changed the formula of their drink and somehow emerged from it all more relevant than ever. Today, I'm joined by Jason Freeman, co-founder and CEO of Four Loko, to talk about how his scrappy college drink startup went from being nearly banned to one of the top-selling beverages in the country, and how the brand has managed to leverage online controversy and transform it into.
They haven't been allowed to add caffeine
Jason,
to it
welcome to How Are
again,
You,
have they?
sir?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Okay, so like
Okay,
many
what the fuck is
millennials,
happening?
I've had a decent amount of Four Loko in my day, and I think the first time I tried it was back in the 2000s in college. When did the company start?
I think I had
and
it in, like,
how did
2010.
you come up with Four Loko?
2010s.
Well,
around
we
then.
started in college. There was 3 of us. We were friends. We went to the Ohio State University. We have to say they teach us. It's one of the only classes that is good at Ohio State. And we had an idea to make a Red Bull and vodka pre-canned product. And this was about 2006, 2007 is when we started. We were 3 young budding entrepreneurs that really thought we
Budding
knew something, but
entrepreneurs.
we didn't really know anything. And we set off to take the world by storm.
How did you come up with the name Four Loko?
So there's 4 ingredients, and it was a crazy blend of flavors. You know, we wanted the can to be really bright and vibrant, so we came up with a camo pattern, which is still kind of our iconic brand today. But again, it was just 3 of us sitting around like a kitchen table and being like, this is what we're gonna do.
What were those 4 ingredients?
It was caffeine,
Alcohol,
taurine,
caffeine.
guarana, and wormwood was the original.
Oh, really? Not
4
alcohol? That's not
ingredients.
even
Yes,
in
we
it? They're
obviously
just
took
like,
caffeine
no.
out many years
Wait, they
ago.
put wormwood
so
in it?
let's get
Okay,
back
that kind
into the,
of
like,
missed me
late
for a
aughts,
second there.
the beginnings of Four Loko. So you started it at college.
didn't know that.
You guys are getting this beverage
That would
brand
explain
off
some
the
of my
ground.
work.
How did you
My
market it
earlier
and get the
Four
word out? I mean, there was no
Loko,
influencer marketing back then.
You know, we didn't have
Expeditions in
big
the early
advertising
2010s.
budgets. We were obviously young college guys that, you know, just starting out. And you got to remember the time period of this. Around 2007, 2008, social media was just emerging. Because
Yeah,
we're college
no, I'm
students, we
before
had
that.
access
I'm,
to
like,
Facebook.
way after
And
this.
so we
I-
did a
I'm
lot
just-
of
I'm-
advertising on Facebook, showing the brand.
2007,
showing to our friends,
2008, I
and
don't
we haven't
drink.
built
I
a
don't drink
firmness.
alcohol at
We're
all.
still trying to, but we believe we were, if not the
I am
first,
both
one of the
too
first
young to
brands
do
actually
it, and
promoted
I
on
also
Facebook.
just don't want to do
And
it,
so we
so
were
I never do
marketing
it.
online,
That
marketing
was
to our
how I
friends,
was
and we were
then.
basically marketing
It
for
was.
ourselves.
It wasn't until like
I
2011,
completely
2012
believe
that I had my first
because
Four Loko.
Facebook didn't even have like brand pages. I don't even think until 2009, and that was like official brand. So
And then
if
I
you're
still-
doing
I was
that
still too
in
young to do it. I
2008,
just
you were
was open to
definitely-
doing it then.
definitely early. Why do you think it caught on so fast?
Everything is timing, right? Especially for brands. And I think we just hit the right time of being able to be a small brand and be able to actually talk to the masses, right? YouTube is just emerging. Facebook,
I'm literally just
obviously,
running
Instagram
around
wasn't
farming
really
right
there
now.
yet,
Like,
but
I'm just
we were
grinding.
able to
That-
talk
this
to
is all this is,
everybody
isn't it?
very
That's all I'm
quickly.
doing. I'm just
And
grinding.
also,
I'm
we were
just- I'm
marketing for
literally grinding
ourselves.
right now.
A lot of brands at the time, you know, was older people trying to market to a younger generation, and we were literally marketing to
wasn't
ourselves
expecting
and our
that.
friends, which made, you know, the brand have more appeal and be more hip and cool.
Tell me how you grew the company. You guys are all at Ohio State, starting this beverage brand, cooking it up. Did you guys graduate and get an office? Like, how did you go about like producing this product?
We didn't actually have an office till about 2012 or 13.
Hey!
We had a little PO box
When I
at
tried
a
the
UPS
first
store
Four
in
Loko,
Chicago,
well, how about
Illinois. Everyone
that?
thought that was our office, but it was like just a little mailbox about this big that people could send our mail. This is emergent of like cloud technology, so if you called our 1-800 number, it just kind of rang to our phone, so we could kind of appear that we were this big company when it was just really 3 guys trying to, you know, figure this out day to day. And then I think from a growing perspective, we really didn't know. Like, our original business plan was like, if we could get to $5 million in revenue, we could retire. You know, we obviously surpassed that greatly, but, you know, we got a small SBA loan. You know, my partner, Jeff, his parents refinanced their house. My parents borrowed against their 401k, and we really had no choice but to be successful. So.
Oh my God, your parents believe in you.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh my
I don't even know
God.
what my
That's
mom
that's
would say
what
if I
that's
came
all
to her
I
with a
got.
business
What I
idea.
just heard was
Okay,
your
so
parents
tell me
believe
how
in
it
you.
became this like, cultural phenomenon, because I feel like when you explain it, it's like, okay, you guys had this idea for this, you know, sort of energy drink, but it was such a phenomenon, and I feel like it just became everywhere in culture. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah, listen, I think a little bit is timing, luck, and a little bit is by design.
Yes,
When
it
we
is.
really started to really look
It
at
is.
what
He's
the
right.
brand
Though. This is
was,
like what
we
other
wanted
like
to
like
be,
streamers and
and we
stuff.
wanted
The people
to
that are
just be
being honest say about their
unapologetically,
position
like,
is that they
American,
just happen
is
to
what
be in the
always
right
our
place
thought
at the
was.
right
We didn't
time.
want to pretend it was something that it wasn't, and I think for us, we really wanted the consumers to create the brand. And a lot of brands will try to have these brand standards and all these
I
things,
do think
and,
for
and
logo,
tell people
like
how
for
it should
it
look.
does
And
get
we
a
were
little
like, okay,
credit.
let's go out
Though.
and look
Like it is kind of
on
like
Facebook,
a
on
you know,
YouTube, and see how are
you
people
would have
using
to
the
have
brand,
some
how are they
sort of
talking about it, and let's take
unique
that
vision.
and make
And
that
it's not
the
like the
brand
most
and how we
brilliant thing,
communicate
but to be like,
and
hey,
really
let's make
communicate
like
with the consumer one-on-one. You know, there was one moment where this
let's make
rap
alcoholic
group in
Red Bull.
Cleveland,
That's
Ohio,
it,
called
right?
the
Like,
G-Wop
let's make people
Gang.
like
They
both like
created
fired
a
up
rap
and
song
also
called
drunk
"Loco
as
for That
hell.
Loco,"
Hell
and
yeah!
it became like this one of the first like viral hits on YouTube, and it still to this day is on YouTube. It has millions and millions of views. And again, we didn't know these
Okay,
guys.
should
They
I go?
just like
Should I
what
go
we're
do
doing,
the
like the
different?
brand. So we hit them up like, hey, how do we support you?
I need to move
You know,
on.
what
I
can
need
we
to stop
do to
doing this. I need
continue
to
to
stop
collab? And that's
backtracking.
always kind of been our ethos. Even today, when we work with creators or even entertainers, they're like, what do you want us to do? And we're like, we want you to be you. Let us fit into what you are doing, as opposed to us telling you, okay, this is how you should look and this is how you should act. We really want people to be themselves and then figure out how our brand fits into that.
Four Loko was one of the first like viral brands. I mean, when we think about like the millennial internet, right?
I mean,
like,
Red Bull.
It was
Like
all
I just
over.
said,
This
Red
was
Bull.
before
Red Bull
Instagram
predated
even.
Four
Can you
Loko.
tell me more about some of those
As a
moments
viral brand,
around
for sure.
this era?
Again, it was just us every day, like how we in the right place, how we at the right parties, how we doing the right things, as opposed to that time. You got to
Red
remember,
Bull is such a
if you
viral
think
brand
about
that
the
they
time
still are
period,
like
again,
they're like
shift
at the
was
top.
really
They
happening
like
from,
are like sponsoring
television
extreme
advertising
sports events
and
and stuff
radio
too.
and print,
They
right? And so
they
those are
were
what
the
big
lightning in a
companies were doing,
bottle
and obviously
company
we didn't have the budgets
for
for
sure.
that. So also we were really doing hand-to-hand combat, whether in store or at parties or at events. And listen, things just started to happen there. I can't really tell you how it happened. It's like T-Pain all of a sudden had this big chain of 2 4 Loko cans, right? And we're just like, okay, we're doing something well. I don't know what it is, but let's continue down this strategy to try to be culturally relevant versus just like, here's our can and here's our ad and here's the vision, right? It's really like, how do we ingrain ourselves in culture? And I think for us, it's like being at the right events, at the right places, at the right parties. And then obviously being at the right timing of social media booming without the algorithm, without you having to really, really try to get to the consumer. We were right there front and center.
Run me through some of like the big cultural moments that you guys were part of in that era.
I mean, Saturday Night Live did like a 3-minute skit on Four Loko, unsolicited, that we didn't even know, right? It was showing up on Bill Maher. It was showing up at night shows. It shows up on The Simpsons. It shows up on all the, you know, the cartoons and the TV shows as kind of a funny joke. It still happens today. And so for us, it's a blessing and a curse because we're not really controlling that. But as things get bigger, then, you know, other companies and regulars start to say, okay, what are they doing? Are they doing something bad? Are they doing something illegal? Which we weren't. You know, we were doing everything above board. But I think for us, it was, how do we be at the right places with the right people in hand? And it's just making sure that we're in every, you know, relevant Lower East Side party, making sure Loco's there, it's front and center. People see it, they're like, oh, okay, I know what that is. And that's something that I really want to be, you know, be a part of my night. We did a skit with the influencer, the Fat Jewish, and I don't know if you know who the Fat Jewish is. He was very cultural relevant at this time. And his idea was, let's give away a whole bunch of money. And we're like, okay, what do you want to do? We rented a little space in Chinatown, and he sent out a post, first person to bring me a Loco wins $10,000. And so we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know who would show up. I think it was a minute and 37 seconds later, this woman showed up in this room with him with a Four Loko in her hand. And basically there was 2 strings attached to the ceiling. And one string was a whole bunch of like turkey and cold cuts, and the other string was $10,000, and she had to pick one, and she obviously picked the right one, and she was showered with $10,000. The brand allows us to kind of do things that normal brands wouldn't do, and I think consumers catch on to that and start to see that, oh, this is authentic. It's kind of weird, but I kind of like it. But it's not doing what the traditional brands are doing, and that's what our ethos has always been for Four Loko.
I think like in this era, as you mentioned, it became so relevant, so all over the place, and so much like media attention around it that you guys were like on everyone's radar. I am thinking of this quote from Esquire around this time that said, Four Loko is arguably the most insane beverage to hit the market since there was actually cocaine in Coca-Cola. And I feel like it was also like very early in terms of moral panics, like online, where nowadays we see like a new moral panic about everything where parents are freaking out. But this was like the internet was young. And I remember even I think like my parents, definitely friends' parents would be like, be careful, you can't have that. Or, you know, it was sort of seen as this like controversial thing. And I think the name fed into that. So that got you guys on the radar of regulators. Tell me what happened there.
Back to your point, I think the notoriety and the increase in awareness and being on social media was a blessing. But then we started to get on everyone's radar. We weren't doing anything different. There was products that were very similar that were on the market. There was products that were adjacent. The ingredients, you have to understand, to get an alcoholic product available for sale, there is many, many levels of approval, right? There's like federal approval, state approval, there's many agencies. So the fact that it was illegal or we were doing something wrong was kind of comical because of the steps that we had to get through to get the product there. But I think what happened, and back to your point about the hysteria around the brand, we met with congressmen and authorities, and I won't name this person, but a little bit older gentleman, and I said, hey, there's no really difference in what we're doing versus a Red Bull vodka or a Kahlua and coffee. And his response to me was, I don't see college kids shotgunning Kahlua and coffee on YouTube. You know, so it really became like, okay, that's a distinction, right? Of how people decide to use it versus like, this is what the actual product was. And we kind of were like the first like cancel culture brand that became this mass hysteria. And it was really hard to kind of sit there and take that because we felt like, hey, we're like these middle class kids that came up, built this from nothing, bootstrapped the American dream, and we thought everyone would be happy for us. And I think people are happy for you as long as you don't start taking away from their stuff. And that's
They definitely weren't the first brand that ever got quote unquote canceled for like a bad business practice that's been happening for decades and decades and decades.
There was a lot of anger. Like
it just didn't have the name
people
cancel
doing like the petitions of like Save For Loco, and like, can you talk about the kind of like the fan response and the consumer response?
No, not bad necessarily.
Most of the fan
business
response,
practices, but just practices.
Was very positive, right? Like even we were going through the governmental issues and we took the caffeine out. There was a vigil in Union Square. Eddie Wang, who writer fresh off the boat, he has a restaurant in the Lower East Side, and he decided to serve Four Loko, and the authorities came in like prohibition style and like shut the place down, right? I think he lost his liquor license for like 5 years because of it. So these all things that were mass hysteria over something that was not that justified for mass hysteria was for us, especially young people at the time, just like, what is going on? Why are we creating so much strife around all this? But I think another story which we talked about, our office at the P.O. box, it was a UPS store, and we get our mail there. And I remember the guy there calling me, he said, hey, there's some people here protesting out front against Four Loko. And so protesters came to the UPS store because they thought it was our office with signs saying like, this is terrible, it's killing kids, right?
Yeah,
and so you're just sitting there and you're like, what is going on? You just figure it out day to day and just keep pushing forward. But the consumer was always there. We always knew we had the consumer because we were doing things authentically. And again, it's not like we're some transformational brand, but we were just real. And I think people saw that for the first time as opposed to trying to press a message on them. It's just like, hey, this is fun in a can. Yeah. and we're going to be unapologetically that.
So you guys removed the caffeine. I'm wondering kind of like how that affected your products. I know after that, the brand had become, like you said, it was this seen as this like toxic thing by so many like adults or like older people and like parents. And like, I feel like it was really hard to like get people, I imagine it was hard to get in bars. How did you evolve and pivot in that era?
We made the decision to remove caffeine. The government, they wanted us to prove to them that caffeine and alcohol mixed together was safe. And we realized is we could fight the government, but we would eventually lose. So we thought, hey, we'll take the caffeine out, we'll make some new product, and we'll move upon our merry way. Well, that's not really what happened. The FDA, who does not regulate alcohol, they regulate food, they sent out a letter saying that this product may or may not be safe. And so, we have our big distributors and the places that sell, they're like, can we sell this stuff? And we're like, we think you can, but we don't know. So we were stuck with $30 million of inventory that we had to destroy overnight. And we didn't have $30 million. We had just started making money. So we worked out a deal with our distributors because we knew the consumer was there. Our bank then kicked us out and said, we don't bank with people like you. So we didn't have a place to like collect deposits or even pay people. So we found a bank in Chicago that, has been a great partner with us for a very long time. And then we had over 90 lawsuits filed against us. Like, hey, I slip and fell. It was because of Four Loko. We even had a woman who was in jail for drunk driving and killed somebody. saying after the fact that she
Those
had
Four
been
Loko-
drinking
yeah.
Four Loko, which there was no proof
Of
of, so
course.
she was suing us from jail. We had to pay $20 million of lawsuits on top of not having a line of credit or any investment. But the consumer was kind of always there.
Damn it.
And so we kind of just had to like get
No! Oh,
through
fuck
this
me.
period of time where we could just
He was in the
filter
worst
through.
fucking spot.
We stayed low. We didn't do many interviews because we weren't going to really get a good shot. Everyone thought we were kind of the devil or doing illegal things. And then we started another brand in 2013, 2014 called Not Your Father's Root Beer, which was an alcoholic.
Oh my God, I didn't know
and
that was
shot up
Four Loko.
very quickly. We had some great partnerships, and then Pabst Brewing Company wanted to purchase the brand, and that kind of helped
It was
us
really
get out of all of our
cloyingly
financial
sweet, though. I didn't like
troubles and
those
mess,
drinks.
and allowed
I'm
us to
sorry.
kind of refocus and move the
Sorry to them, I
business
guess.
forward. Which we've been doing for kind of the last 10 years, innovating new
well,
partnerships and
I should have
brands as well.
Well, you guys, especially in the mid 2010s, I feel like we're really early influencer marketers. Like you've always leveraged the internet and like been able to wield the internet, and I feel
Here,
like
let's
that's
go
maybe
back.
what helped get you through that time
And,
too. Because like the
restore
first 5
my
years of the
health.
2010s, I feel like it was rough. Can you tell me what brands you went on to launch next? Because I think you did like the rosé, or tell me about all that.
Yeah, we had a great partnership with Josh Ostrowski, also known as the Fat Jewish. Him and his partners had this great idea to start a candy line called Babe,
Ow.
and then another rosé called White Girl Rosé on top of that was very successful. And they wanted to be kind of like, and it kind of was the first kind of internet social influencer alcohol brand. Obviously, there's so many of them now, but he was really the pioneer of that. And we kind of worked the back end. He worked, and his partners worked the marketing. It was very successful and sold to Anheuser-Busch a couple years later, which was great.
Let's do it.
We've had some failures as well, which I think can't always talk about the highs, but we had some good ideas. There's a golfer called John Daly. We did a John Daly cocktails with him. It went pretty well. It just didn't have the success of some of the other brands. As far as influencer marketing or creators, we're always open to any of these people that make sense, that are authentic, that are really doing things authentic. And I think even when Josh with the Fat Jewish went through some issues himself, we were like, hey, we're here, we're supportive. How do we work together? And I think that's always kind of been our ethos, is like we kind of feel for people that get the raw end of the cancel stick, as long as it's not something really crazy. We're always very supportive of that because we know that it can be misunderstanding sometimes.
You still struggled even after taking the caffeine out, right?
I mean, listen, we still to this day this happened, but obviously right after one of the big moments where we saw kind of society in itself come after us is there was a couple big after parties for Lollapalooza, which
is the right way to
obviously
get
there's
to
Coachella and these other events that have big after parties. So we had an idea to have Lollapalooza talent at an after party for free for our consumers. And so we found this warehouse on the west side of Chicago.
No.
We had Little Uzi Vert. We had, Major Lazer. We had a whole bunch of great artists that were going to come and play. We didn't know if 100 people would show up or 1,000. About 2,500 people showed up at 5 o'clock for a 7:30 doors opening. So we were at capacity really quick. And as we let people in, it was, free show, free Four Loko. We had food and events and activations. And the police chief came down and basically said, I wasn't aware of this event, and I heard that Chief Keef was playing here. Now, Chicago and Chief Keef, you don't know, there's very bad blood. There's a lot of negativity around him, which wasn't true. He was just saying that. And it wasn't because of that. It was because it was us and that we were doing a free show. So
oh my God.
they literally shut us down. And so people are showing up,
I have to go all
like
the way around.
artists,
That's
and people
it.
are coming to our
Okay,
event, and there's cop cars all around and sirens. So it kind of helped the brand a little bit from a street credibility, but it kind of sucked because we had put so much into this party, and it got shut down basically on false pretenses when Red Bull was having a party, half a mile away.
I mean, you mentioned Lil Uzi Vert. I feel like you guys also worked with a lot
Oh my
of
God,
music
I feel
artists
like an
really
idiot.
early,
That
right?
was so
I mean,
bad.
Can you talk about
That was
I mean, music has always been a big thing of us. We started Four Loko Records. We didn't do much around it, but we always knew that internet, music, alcohol, they're just intertwined. And how do we do well with those? Obviously, we talked about T-Pain, Little Uzi Vert, Major Lazer.
I think you guys worked with Riff Raff.
Riff Raff's an interesting one. We wanted to change the narrative, right? So I think this might have been around the same time, about 2014, 15. Everything had gone social media. Television, it was like nobody was doing it. And so we had this idea because Vice had just started their television channel and they had some ad space. So we're like, hey, wouldn't it be crazy if we were like, we're so anti doing commercials, we actually did a commercial. And so we did a commercial with Riff Raff that aired only on Vice, which was very fun. And he's a walking Four Loko. Just everything about him is a walking Four Loko. So it was a perfect partnership. We got a little fanfare, but it was fun and it's just something that we like to try a little different.
Okay, Okay, so you guys are like doing pretty well. It seems like you sold off multiple alcohol brands and then COVID hit. And I feel like 2020 must have been tough because I mean, I just know people in the beverage space, consumer product space had a really
I
hard
can't
time.
move. I
How did
literally
you
can't
navigate
move.
that?
The
Oh
beginning
my
stages
God,
was very tough
dude.
because we didn't know what was going to happen, right? Obviously, bars and restaurants shut down. Almost all of our sales are done
locked
in
me
convenience
right in
stores,
there.
liquor stores,
It
and
literally
package stores.
locked me in that
So
spot.
when
I'm
they
so
said
mad.
that these are essential services, it kind of saved our business. A lot of brands are highly, reliant on bars and
I already
restaurants.
leveled-
We are not.
I leveled up,
but
so it
it
doesn't
was
really
hard
matter, but
because
whatever.
we have a lot of employees that this was their livelihood.
At this
We
point,
didn't,
that's not very much.
Get rid
That's
of any
not very
employees. We
many
kept everybody on at full
microplastics or
salary.
souls or
What we
whatever
did is just
it's
changed
called in
our
this one.
sales
Ergo.
tactics. We went from people making sales calls to calling people on the phone or sending mailers or sending emails until it was safe for people
I
to go out.
permanently kill
Our
this?
business actually expanded during COVID because of how our products consumed, and we weren't not really relying on restaurant and bars, really just liquor stores and convenience stores and package stores. And so it brought a lot of people to our category that may have not have drank us before.
This video is brought to you by Delete Me. As a high-profile journalist dealing with stalking, death threats, harassment, and more, I know how crucial it is to protect your privacy online. Unfortunately, no matter how careful you are, data brokers will collect and sell your personal information to anyone willing to pay for it. This includes your name, address, phone number, and
Okay,
more.
well, fuck
when
you.
someone buys your data through a broker, they don't just
That was
see
stupid,
you.
I'm sorry.
They see your spouse, your parents, your loved ones, anyone you're connected to. Removing this information off the internet helps keep you safe from things like identity theft and stalking. But how do you remove your information from the web when there are thousands of data brokers? Delete Me
Fuck,
is a
man.
subscription
I need to
service
kill this thing.
that
I'm
will
killing it.
automatically remove your personal information and being sold online. It's been an absolute game changer. I feel like also Four Loko is now being embraced by Gen Z, and I'm wondering if you
I
could
need
talk a
that thing
little
to
bit
be
about that.
dead.
Like, how did you, as like a brand that was so associated with millennials, like also become such a favorite of Gen Z? Because I feel like it's really hard, and a lot of those brands that had so much early success around the time that you did, like they're sort of stuck in that era, and they never really like evolved with youth culture. So tell me how you manage that.
I think that you're completely right, and there are two different, obviously, consumers and the way that they think. But I think what we've always been successful at is we want to make Loco like a rite of passage. It's like, this is the thing you drink before you go out, right? This is the thing that you do. And I think us, again, back to music, our big partnership with Live Nation, always being at EDC and Rolling Loud, and these consumers are coming in as they're becoming a legal drinking age, and they're seeing us, and we're really staying
there was
in
no
that place
special.
where it's
That's
cool
lame.
to drink or part of history, as opposed to where you see a lot of brands, they start to get spokespersons or people that look like the people that they want to market to. And we've really stayed away with that. Loco is just unapologetically like, this is what we are. If you want to have a good night in a can, that's what we are. And so I think not getting too specific. The best thing that happens for me, and people think I hate it, is when some older millennials are like, oh wait, I thought that was banned. And I was like, yes, because you shouldn't see any of our marketing. If you're seeing our ads, then we're doing something very, very wrong.
Dude, I can't.
And
I
so
can't take
I
it.
think
I
for
can't
us
take
to
it.
stay
Fuck,
relevant,
what the
you have to stay relevant in culture. You have to stay relevant in music, and you have to stay
I
relevant.
hate these
with
kind
who
of
are the
enemies.
new
This kind of
and
enemy is
interesting
harder than every
creators that are
boss,
coming up,
and I hate
I think we consistently do that.
I can go up to a
well,
boss
talk
and
to me
like
about how
expect
you've like
most of how
navigated
it'll
also
work
just the
out and,
internet
like,
now,
kind
because
of
when you
predict
started, like it
movesets
was
and
so much
stuff, but
smaller,
this kind of
and
enemy
like
is just
having
so
a viral
fucking
video on
annoying.
YouTube was like life changing, and now it's like TikTok. There's millions of viral videos all day. So how do you approach social media now as a brand?
Yeah, listen, I think it's very important. We have a great team of people who their only job is to scour the internet day and night. We had posts that trend on Twitter without any paid media, right? Which is very rare for a brand. But I think we're constantly on top of what's happening, right? As opposed to us creating content, it's like, what's the topic of the day? Like Harambe's back now in the conversation, right? So we're going to do content around that to be relevant around that. So I think it's finding out what is the conversation online, because that is their conversation in real life as well.
Damn,
and how
I
do
keep
we
fucking that
insert
one
in
up.
part of that as opposed
Is it always
to try to
3?
be
I thought that
the
the last one
conversation.
was.
You guys
that
also
was 4.
launched a
I
bunch
thought the
of
last one
new
was 3.
flavors, right?
I think a couple years ago, what happened is every flavor we launched, our competitors would copy, right? So it's like, okay, we have a blueberry, smash, and now the next brand has the same thing. And so we step back and we're like, how do we create kind of like a platform that not only works on the can, but works in the internet and then works in real life? We started that with Four Loko Gold. There's a lot of play around gold. We had gold chains. the can is gold, and everyone's like, well, what's the flavor? And that's kind of
That's
the
the one
great
where
part
he does
about
the
it. You
extra
kind of get to
charge on
like
the third
discover
one.
what the flavor is, and if it works for you, it doesn't. So that was like the #1 innovation in our category. And then we followed up with USA, Four Loko USA, and people
knew
are like,
that
well,
was
what's
coming, but
USA?
I got
It's like,
hit.
tastes like freedom, right? So it's like playing off of that, being fun. And then we did a great partnership with Warheads Candy, where we had a Warheads flavor, which was obviously very successful. You're seeing a lot of non-alcoholic brands kind of extend into alcoholic brands, and we thought that this was a great kind of merge and play. And then our last is Four Loko Camo, which we've owned camo for a long time. Camo, obviously, from fashion to hunting,
Jesus
it's just
Christ,
become
I'm
this
fucked,
big
man.
thing. So we're kind of on trend, and we're like, hey, we own this. Like, why don't we really own it? You know, our merch has been selling out. We've been sending stuff to people. Even our partnership with FaZe, like they love wearing our camo kind of merch. So it's been a good kind of ride on doing these partnerships of flavors. But the hard part is we have to figure out the next one.
Well, also I'm curious, like how
I need
you
to learn how to
navigate the
camera
beverage
that. Like,
landscape
I'm done
today,
now.
because it seems like there's
I'm going
this
full on
also focus
student
on like
now. I'm
health
just going
and
straight
like
into that thing again.
cleanliness, or you know what I mean? Like it's all about like this is a natural, and
I can
when
probably
I
run
think
by
of
it,
Four
but I
Loko,
don't
I
want
kind
to.
of think
I
of
want to
like
learn how to kill
Jolly
this thing. What the
Ranchers,
fuck?
like in a can.
I
Like
hate
it
it. I
doesn't
hate this
seem
thing.
like
I hate
it's like
it. I hate it with a
clean
passion.
drink
I hate
that
this
you would
thing
drink
so
on the
much
way to
right now.
Pilates or
I hate it.
something. So how have you sort of navigated that like boom in sort of like wellness, I guess, or do you just sort of ignore that and you're like, that's not my consumer?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. It's something that we consistently talk about, right? I don't think Four Loko's never going to be all natural, low calorie, low sugar. It's just not the DNA of the brand. But what we did is we created a brand called Mamitas.
Okay, that was
with
way
Brody
too
Jenner,
wide of a
which
swing.
is
What the
1 gram
fuck,
of sugar,
man? That's the other
95
thing I need to
calories,
learn about this game
all
is that
natural, healthy
almost
ingredients,
every
tequila
attack
based,
also attacks
right? So
behind, too.
that is our foray into that. With the Loco, I think people are more informed, but I still do think people are, you know, inclined. I mean, you go to Starbucks, you know, people are ordering frappuccinos that are 1,000 calories, right? You go to the bar and you order a margarita, like that has a lot of sugar. It's not that different than Four Loko. So I think people do want some balance in their life, most people, and they want a little bit of that release. And not only do they get a release from Loco, I guess, in the healthy eating way, but I think the brand actually says something for people. So I think anything in moderation is important, but I think for us, the health and wellness is creating different brands to
Okay, I need
target
to go on the
that
other side
type
first of all.
Tell me about what your business looks like now. I mean, you guys have evolved, I think, from a P.O. box in Chicago. So how, you know, where's the company operating? How many people do you have, and what does it look like today?
Our main office
Bro,
is in
I don't
Chicago,
know if I can
an
ever
actual
beat this
real
thing.
office,
This is
which
literally
I'm at today.
harder than
We
every
have
boss I've
about
fought in this game.
253
Am I just drunk? Is
employees.
that what's
We have
happening?
office
Am I
here.
just an
We have
idiot?
office in Monterey,
'Cause
Mexico.
what the fuck is
We
happening
have
with
one
this
in
fucking thing?
Ireland. What's happened through this and what happened through kind of all the negative publicity in media is international attention started to come upon us. And we spread through Mexico, South America. Four Loko has become like the #1 RTD in like a lot of these Central and South American markets. It's #1 RTD in Ireland, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and now we're moving kind of south through UK, and eventually will be the #1 RTD in the United Kingdom, which we're spreading through Europe. And we just launched Australia, which is a completely different market.
Oh my
but
god,
very
okay, I
similar,
can't take this
obviously,
anymore.
with
That was so
speaking.
ridiculous.
And so
Why the
we're
fuck is
using
that
our
thing
same
here right now?
playbook in these markets, you know, finding the real interesting creators, you know, that are up and coming, heavy social media presence, and, you know, really unapologetically American. We are pitching that.
I'm done,
and
man. I
people
can't play this
resonate
game
with that
anymore.
a lot, whether it's in Asia, or whether it's in South America, or whether it's in Europe. You know, we're staying to that, like, this is the American brand.
Where did that
People
even
love
come
it.
from?
It's
Literally,
interesting
where did it
because
come
it's
from? I thought it was over on the
managed
left
to be
side.
This like
I didn't
hyper
overgo-
American
I
brand.
didn't
and you're
think
right,
it
like, when
went
I
over
think of it,
there.
I think of like American culture, I guess, because it's like party culture and like I don't know. There's something like you said, it's very like American. Like I don't want to say trashy, but like you know, it's like that.
You can say
fun.
it. You can say it.
but it's not like toxic American. Like I feel like now, especially as brands are so politicized, it's not seen that way. You know what I mean? Even though it is like hyper American at this time when like there's so much controversy over nationalism, like it's kind of avoided that. And I don't know how you've been able to do that, if that's been intentional.
We're for everybody, right? I'll give you a prime example. So we made these hats, which were red hats, very red, and they said, "Make America Loco again." And I would wear this hat in the airport, and I would get scowls at me, just people staring at me, not happily, right? and then they would actually
Okay,
read it
we're
and they
done.
would start laughing.
We're done.
But then they're like, wait a
I
second,
don't think I can do this.
are you for this or are you against this? Are you here?
I don't know if I can beat this thing right now.
It's for everybody. We're for everybody that just wants to have a good time. I mean, we're still for decency
be
and
dodging
like
more, I think
we
that
do
too.
have values, but it's also like if you're a decent person, we're for everybody.
Well, you're not like an overtly political brand, right? And I think that that's been really hard actually for brands to navigate.
God,
I
I've
mean, you're
literally
talking about
died more
cancel
against
culture,
this
like,
one
of the
enemy
biggest
than
examples I
every
can think
boss
of
in the
is, like,
game
Bud
at
Light
this point.
and them
I
doing the
literally,
single
that's
wrong
literally
influencer
true.
marketing ad and like being targeted. You know, how do you manage to not like have the internet come for you in that way and have like people
Oh my God, I fucking hate
lawmakers
these
getting
things.
involved and things like that?
Well, I think we want the internet come for us because it's fun for us. There were a brand the internet should come for us. Like if we would have been Bud Light, it would have been fine. Right?
Wait,
and I
what?
think that's kind of the point. We're not so serious and we don't pretend to be this, you know, Midwestern American brand. We're not. We're unapologetically American. So I think what happens is when you're not authentic and then you try to do something out of authenticity,
Okay, I think
that's
I'm
not
done.
authentic.
I'm done with this
that's
game.
when people
I
come
can't
for
do
you.
this.
But
I
for
can't
us,
do
you look
it.
at our history.
I can't
We
fucking
work
beat
with,
this thing
with
right
everybody,
now. What
right?
the
Again,
fuck? I'm gonna
as
have to
long
come
as you're
back
not
in
like
tomorrow.
completely breaking the law or doing something against values, like we're open to it. If you said something wrong, okay, like maybe you just said something
Every
wrong that
attack
day.
does
You
like
know what I mean?
almost a
Like, I think it's
360,
more
so
about
there's
the
no way to
person,
get it
and I
from
think
behind.
Me and my partner Jeff, we meet all these creators. Like, there's no one that
Dude,
we've done
no
business with.
fucking shot.
We don't go
Like,
through
literally,
an agency
I
to
don't know
find
what to
someone
do.
based on their metrics. Like everybody they work with, we sit down and
Those
have
last
dinner
two attacks you
with,
could
and
go
we have a
around
conversation
behind.
with them.
The first two
and we
you
want to
can't.
be connected
try
with
to
them in that
dodge
way.
away from them
and so
and
we
then
have a
try
pretty
to
good
dodge
filter.
through the
Like, is this
second
one of
ones.
our people or is it not? Right? And I think that's the difference. Where what happened with Bud Light, they just outsourced this thing to this agency, and they had no idea what they were doing or who they were working with until the backlash came. Like, I know who we're working with, and if there's backlash, okay, we're ready for it, right? This is a good person. They made a mistake.
Well, it is rare that companies meet the creators, especially the CEOs meet the creators. Like you said, I think so many people want to leverage the internet. They just outsource it because they're like, oh, we feel like we should be doing influencer marketing. So like, we're going to just outsource that.
And that's where I think even our social media team is, I'm looking at them right now, you know, they're like creating Harambe content right now, right? So like we do everything internal. Yes, we
But
have
it just
outside
does
partners
that.
that help
God
us
damn
with
it,
ideas.
dude.
But I think if you really want to be
Okay,
part
I
of the
can't do this
conversation
anymore.
and part of the internet, it has to be internal.
No
It has to be
fucking
part of
shot.
the
I'm
culture, and
done.
I think
I'm done.
those
I'm
brands
done.
that
I
do that are
quit.
the
I
brands
quit
that
video
win.
games.
Okay, so
Literally, I
Florida
quit
has
video
been on
games.
such a roller coaster of a company story, but where do you guys see the brand going next, and what do you have planned for the future?
I think let me get my crystal ball out, right? The world domination, I
think
guess,
I
is
think I
kind of
literally
it.
should
No,
just
but I
move
think
on.
for us,
Like,
it's
I don't need to
continuing
fight
grow
this
the
thing at all
brand.
right
It's
now. I can
continuing
just come back and
the
kill it
Four
later.
Loko
Some other
brand to
some other
be
night.
cemented into
When it's
pop
not
culture
like apparently
we are,
my
but it has to stay
main
relevant.
kryptonite
You can't just
in
sit back on
existence.
those laurels. So we are expanding. We have new partnerships coming up, new brands. We obviously did a big partnership with FaZe Clan, which is
Fucking
in
hell,
gaming,
man!
something
You
we've
gotta
never done
get
before.
get the fuck out
And
of
then
here.
international expansion. We're in about 30 countries now. We want to double that, you know, in 5 years. So that is really understanding the intricacies of all these different countries. And then again, back to your conversation about health and wellness, we have our brand Mamitas. We have some other different brands that we're working on. And so for us, again, Jeff and I, we own this company. We run it. I have a great partner who's, you know, my best friend, and we're having so much fun. And I think we're going to keep doing this till we're done having fun and
Dude.
pissing people off. And we want the internet to come for us. So if they're not coming from us, then we're not doing something well. So I think that is the
This
ethos of
literally
Four
is
Loko.
harder than every
it is
fucking
kinda
boss.
Like, well, fuck you. Well, okay, yeah, okay, now we're
I
good.
hate
We're
trying to
friends,
read where
right?
this thing
So
needs to
I
be
think
attached.
that's, you know, what we want to continue to create a great place where people
No
enjoy
way.
working and doing fun stuff.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. To get your data removed from the internet, check out joindeleteme.com and use code Taylor20 at checkout for 20% off. All right, that's it for the show. Don't forget to subscribe to my tech and online culture newsletter, usermag.co. That's usermag.co, where I cover all of this stuff.
I don't think
and
there's a
more.
way
You
to
can watch
get close
full
enough to
episodes
that
of
thing to
Power
hit
User
it
on
right
my
now.
YouTube
Like, I'm
channel
done.
at
I'm not
Taylor
gonna do
Friends.
this anymore.
If
I'm
you
done.
like the show,
I'm finished
give us
with
a
it.
rating
I
and
don't care.
review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
I would have
or
to
wherever you listen.
literally
We'll be
parry
back
it every
next
time, and
week
I don't
with a
wanna do
brand new
that.
episode of Power User. See you then.
See, like I can't even do it. Shit. I can't believe I parried that. Wait, what? I don't remember that. Oh no, he's doing a different attack set now. This is literally just a boss. This is just a boss that's not labeled a boss. No. Bro, I was doing so well for a second. I read everything.
There's no greater harm to the world if like some Sabrina Carpenter fan doesn't have the most adventurous taste in music. But there is like potentially harm to the world when you have...
I was gonna deep dive Taylor to see what else she's covered. I'm already a fan of Taylor's. Dude, I'm so mad. I'm so frustrated. I'm just gonna keep throwing myself at this until I beat it. It's gonna have to be reading the moves. That's like literally the only way to do this. Fuck me. Oh my god, I did it. Oh. Jesus Christ, fuck that thing. Oh my god. Does it respawn? Like, if I come back here, will it respawn? I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna open the chest first, but I'm gonna come back and see if it respawns. If it does, fuck that thing. Never again. Never again. Although I've learned its moves completely now. Anyway, if it's back, we're running by it. Straight on by. Roll black water, keep on rolling. Oh yeah, no, it's gone. Fuck that thing, Dan. Oh yeah, okay, here. Forgot.
As people realize that there's a market for this, there's going to be a lot more industry plant type content in this space.
While scrolling your feeds lately, you might have noticed a lot more children in front of microphones. Kids aged roughly 8 to 13 now make up one of the hottest and fastest growing audiences in podcasting. And a slew of tween-run podcasts have cropped up to reach this market.
I have not noticed
How does a 12-year-old end up in a
because
podcast
I don't
studio
follow
with a
that sort of
$300
thing.
Shure mic? Today, I'm joined by EJ Dixon, a reporter who's been covering this phenomenon. She spoke with the creators, platforms, and producers shaping the tween podcast space. Today, we're going to discuss the rise of the tween podcaster, why so many middle schoolers are picking up the mic, the big brand money behind it all, and what this space might ultimately evolve into. Hi, EJ. Welcome to Power User.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan.
So to start off, I feel like we've all seen a lot of these kids on our feeds coming up, or at least we've seen
I've
clips
already
of some
killed
of these
this
tween
thing.
podcasts.
Fuck.
Tell me about
I went out
this
here instead
tween
of going
podcast
further over
phenomenon.
there.
What is happening?
I just started noticing
It's my
on
mistake.
my For You page and on my Instagram Reels that there were so many clips of like tween boys podcasting. So that was the original pitch to my editor. Why do these tween boys have podcasts? Like, who is giving these tweens podcasts? And it eventually expanded into something a little bit broader.
Why do you think tweens are suddenly drawn to podcasting? Because I feel like I've noticed the same
It's like one of our
phenomenon where
main
I just
media
increasingly
experiences. Like,
see
what do you
these
mean?
12, 13, 14-year-olds with mics in front of their face all over my TikTok and Instagram.
I think it's a few reasons. I think the main reason is because it's pretty easy. and
Okay,
low
I get it.
lift.
You're not
I mean,
gonna
you as a
fall.
content creator know that there's a world of difference
You're
between
too
sitting and
smart.
shooting
You're
and
too
editing
smart
like a
to
30-minute
fall. I
YouTube
get it.
video versus making a podcast where you
Ow.
can just invite
I'm
somebody
not,
on
though.
and talk and shoot the shit. So it's fairly low lift. So I think that's a big reason. I also think that there's a lot more advertising budget being thrown around in the podcasting space right now versus YouTube.
Do I just go
or
take it on
versus
again? Jesus
other
Christ, I already did
platforms like
this.
Instagram.
Okay,
so
I'll have
there's
to
money
do it
in
again.
But I think
Fine,
the
I don't
primary
give a shit.
reason is
Oh,
just how big
I don't need
podcasts
it.
have been getting
I don't need
over the past year, especially in the coverage following the election, how there was all this discussion about the
This is where I came
podcast
from, right?
manosphere. Everybody was
Originally.
realizing
No, wait,
who
I thought I came from there
BFR was,
originally.
who Milk Boys were. They
Yeah,
were
hold
covering,
on.
you know, how Donald Trump during the campaign had appeared on all of these manosphere podcasts and coming to terms with how much clout these people have. Kids are seeing that, and kids
Yeah,
have figured
okay,
that
hold
out
on a
before
second.
the media
Let's
did
readjust.
as well.
Yeah, it seems like we're in this era of the podcaster as a massive content creator.
what?
Obviously, we saw people like Joe Rogan and Alex Cooper get these massive podcasting deals from Spotify. There seems to be so much money in this space. And I feel like it's just a format that's become so ubiquitous online as well with the rise of TikTok and just young people being bombarded with these like podcast clips in their feeds. It seems like it just maybe has made them want to hop in on the medium as well.
Do I just
think
take
that
it?
the
Oh, I guess I'll just take it for a
phenomenon
ride in a
of
second. Hold on a
podcasts
second.
being
then.
promoted with like TikToks and
Let me
clips
look
on
around a
Instagram
little more
Reels,
carefully.
which has really started exploding over the
Okay,
past
let's go.
year or two. Like, I think that's a huge, huge, huge part of it. And I also think the massive success of Barstool Sports as a podcasting empire and Dave Portnoy has played a tremendous role in the proliferation of like tween podcasting.
Speaking of Dave Portnoy, I want to run through some of
Did I already
the
do this?
most
I think I might
popular,
have.
at least most well-known tween podcasts with you. And you mentioned a few of them in your article. Number one is the MD Foodie Boys. This is a group of kids that are from Maryland, obviously MD, and they've actually cited Dave Portnoy as their inspiration. I think they collaborated with him. So
They
just
literally
give
all
me
have
a
the
sense
same
of
haircut.
Who are MD Foodie Boys? I did do their first exclusive interview, so that is on my YouTube channel if you want to watch. But
Do people
who
still
are
get
these kids
perms
and
or
what
like
is
Gen
the
Z
vibe
or
of
like
their
Gen Alpha guys
The MD
getting
Foodie
perms
Boys
to get
are
that
these
kind of
13 and
like
14
that
year
haircut, the
old
ramen
boys
noodle
in
on
eighth
top
grade
haircut?
in Hartford County, Maryland. I think the word that can best be used to describe the vibe of their podcast
I'm not
is
I'm not like a
wholesome.
hairstyle or
Literally,
fashion
their
person.
podcast is just
Like,
them sitting around
people
a
would
table
assume
with
that if you're a
these
trans woman, you're
ridiculously
like into that kind of thing. I'm not. I don't care.
microphones and recording equipment.
When I realized that
sharing their
people would treat me
opinions
as a
about, like,
woman
school
without me
lunch
putting on makeup or
the
anything,
best
like,
Pringles flavors,
dressing a
I
certain
think
way,
they
like I
had
can
a
just
clip
I go
out
out as
circulating
I
about
want, and I'm fine with
oatmeal and
it.
whether or not oatmeal
Fuck you,
is
man.
mid.
Go away.
It's just very, very innocuous content, and that's kind of what has resonated with people so much that it really feels like you are just sitting at
Another
the
one.
table in an 8th grade
Okay, no, I can't kill another
cafeteria
one of these
talking
things
to
right now.
these boys,
I'm done.
and it feels extremely organic. And they've developed this fan following to the degree
Fuck.
that all of
Do I
their
have to
fans
kill
on
it to get through
Instagram
there?
came up with names for them. Like, one of them is nicknamed Chub Perm because he's got a perm. The
Like,
other
would
one is
it not
nicknamed
open unless I
McLovin
kill that
because
thing?
he's
Because
a little bit
wait,
like
no,
McLovin.
hold on.
He also
Wait,
famously
no.
doesn't eat vegetables, or he went viral for trying celery. There's this whole lore around them that is very similar, I think, to that around
Okay, no, I'm being
the
extreme.
Costco guys. I think that's the closest parallel that I can draw to the MD Foodie Boys. It's the same type of content, like very wholesome, G-rated, innocuous content, and also they've sort of built this whole lore and universe around their content as well.
Yeah, it seems like it's so benign that it's almost
Wait a
brain
second.
rot
Why am I
level.
back?
Like
Wait,
you
okay,
said, it
hold
feels
on.
like you're in an
Let me
8th
try
grade
this one more
cafeteria
time.
listening
Let's
to
go.
these kids
Let's see
debate
what happens.
Doritos. But they've become so huge. I feel like they're really dominating in this space. But another super viral teen
interesting.
podcast is the GSD podcast. And these kids also they constantly come up on my Instagram feed because they're always commentating on politics, or they'll
Wait,
do
did I
like
connect
this
to?
like emergency
Okay, I'm gonna have
pod
to go
talking
back.
about
I'm sorry.
tariffs, and it's
I
just so bizarre to
apologize
see these
immensely.
children talking about events. So what is this podcast? Because I never really looked into it.
Is
other
this
than
meant to
sort
be
of
a
seeing
connection
viral
to
clips.
this area? I
Who's
need to find
involved
where
with
it's
it
supposed
and
to
who's
connect
behind it.
Yeah, that's how they came on my radar too. I saw the viral clip of the roundtable of the tween boys discussing, I think they were discussing tariffs actually. And in the same episode, they talk about like whether or not they would prefer to have ice in their water.
This is
so it's
literally
sort of
becoming,
a
like-
combination of Ben Shapiro, like mini Ben
Yeah,
Shapiro.
no, it's like a parody
and MD
of like what we've
Boys
seen
is-
from like
is kind
right-wing
of
podcasting
the
all
vibe,
these
except,
years.
You know, ultra right.
Where like they talk about something that they don't actually understand at all, but like nobody else that's in their audience understands it either, so they don't understand how fucking stupid they sound. And then they talk about something that's complete bullshit that they made up, or you know, like whatever, some bullshit shit. That's hilarious. It's literally they're just imitating what they've seen other adults doing, and it's retarded.
Who are 10 and 12 essentially became political content creators. So they're trying to build this content creation empire around this podcast and eventually spin it out into a couple other different media. Their audience is not that big, like their native audience. And something that the dad told me that I thought was really interesting was that most of their audience and engagement is negative. It comes from people like us, like liberals, who sort of come across it and are like, these kids are getting indoctrinated. These kids are going to be the biggest.
Am I going
lefties
crazy?
in the
I
world
thought that I
someday.
was
But
just hearing,
they don't have like a
like, left.
huge native audience, but they do have some degree of clout like within the conservative ecosystem. Like they've had some pretty big names on their podcast. They had Savannah Hernandez on their podcast, who's this big right-wing Twitter influencer. They had Callie Means, the guy who helped shape RFK's like Maha agenda. So they're making inroads, like slowly but
Wait,
surely.
what am I
The
fucking
next one you
doing
mentioned in
here?
your story, was the Salty Boys podcast. Can you explain what they're up to?
Yeah, they're a group of kids who started a podcast a year or two ago. It's a combination of like hustle,
Like, genuinely.
bro content, weightlifting tips, Bible quotes. It's very much like an imitator in the manosphere vein.
There's also the Girl Talk podcast, which I guess these girls are a little bit older because they seem to be teens, more like teen versus tween, but they're getting so massive on YouTube. I mean, these videos have like hundreds of thousands of views. Can you describe their content?
Yeah, again, it really just feels like you're sitting at in this case, high school cafeteria, like shooting the shit with these high school girls. They like rate each other's Coachella outfits. They talk about their first kisses. They talk about like the craziest DM their exes sent them when they slid in their DMs. It's very much exactly the type of conversation that you would overhear real teen girls having. So they've really resonated with that audience.
And then we have the LOL podcast. This is another one that is inescapable on YouTube, and I feel like I've seen their YouTube shorts all over. It kind of like merges YouTube, like kids YouTube content, but also it's kind of like Mr. Beastie, like the vibe of it. Tell me about the LOL podcast.
This is really fucking annoying.
I think the way that you described it is actually
I'm not sure
pretty
how to get
spot on.
around
It's a
that.
combination of stunts where you'll
It
have
seems
like
like
the
they want me to
Mr.
do
Beast
something else there,
thumbnail,
but I
like,
don't really know
did TK
how.
at TK and
Okay,
with
let's
his
move on.
face. And the podcast is a wide range of content creators. I think the youngest one is 14, and the oldest one is like 20.
I don't care
there's
about
5 of them. I
the
think they're
saved.
all like broadly. I don't even know what generation
if I
it's
died, I
Gen
don't
Alpha
give a
or
shit.
Gen Z. But they're
I'm
super
already
like,
leveled
YouTube
up enough
pilled in my
that
mind.
this
Like they
isn't
have
really
these
many,
hyper
like, souls or
expressive
whatever are to me,
thumbnails
or
that are like.
ergo.
I mean, one is like, "Are boys
Ergo.
scared of tampons?" You know, and it's like. Harper made Kate cry. I got blocked on Valentine's Day. I know it's not AI generated, but some of these titles.
I'm
just
actually
seem like
okay.
they're
I'm trying to
almost
just
AI
learn
generated,
parodying
like,
now.
teen slop.
It almost seems like a parody of.
If you
what
watch me
tweens
playing
and
another
teens
Crab's
would be talking
Treasure, you
about.
saw
There-
me
it
learn the
doesn't
shell
really
parries
have
so
the
well that it was
same
happening like every
type
single
of
time, and
authenticity
now I'm just like
that I
I'm
would say,
totally
like, the MD
lost
Booty
because I'm
Boys
totally
has.
used to that delayed
It's very
parry
much
on
like
release.
targeted towards
It's like the
YouTube generation,
control
where
I'm
they
used
build
to,
these
like in my head
narratives
now.
and relationships.
And the final one that you mentioned is the Rock Pod, which is the podcast from the Rock Squad, which is also a group of sort of child
All right,
content
whatever,
creators
let's
on
do it.
YouTube.
No more
Their
excuses.
content is also very YouTube held, like so much. I just feel like Mr. Beast's influence, like can be seen on all of these things, but there's just like hyper saturated colors, bright stuff. The Rock Pod seems to be a bunch of young girls that have just recently started their podcast, right?
It's honestly like it's difficult to sort of differentiate between some of these. It's almost like entering like a parallel universe where you just like click in and you see all these like creators that are huge and have huge followings, but you've just never ever heard of.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
it
they're just
seems
only
like
popular with
they're
kids.
sort of capitalizing on a more recent strategy, which is creating this content house and creating like all different types of content. And the podcast is just sort of another way to brand themselves, like another arm of that type of content.
I think it's interesting how many of these podcasts offer advice. I mean, one of the Rock Pod's recent episodes is relationship advice from teens, as I don't know why we would want relationship advice from
right?
teens, but it seems like they're really focusing on a younger audience or like a teen audience or even an audience that's younger than they are. Who's the listenership for a lot of these podcasts? Is it other teens or is it even younger than that?
It's kind of hard to gauge because of child privacy and data collection laws. The people that I spoke to were like, yeah, it's really hard to find data for audience members who are younger than 18. From what I can tell, though, I think that's right. Like, I think that assessment is right, that it is for kids who are younger than the age of the people in the videos. Because, when I was 18, I wouldn't have sat there and listened to a podcast by fellow 18-year-olds about their first kisses.
Alright,
and
let's try to do this
Snapchat
again.
etiquette. It just would not have
Here.
been interesting to me.
Oh, wait, no, you know, I can
been
just
interested in
kite it,
something like
can't
a
I?
lot
Let's
edgier.
kite. Let's do
So
kiting.
I do think that it is sort of like for tween girls.
It's 2025. You just have to kite your enemies
in some way.
Yeah, and back to the idea of advice too. I feel like so many of these podcasts really
There's
were
a peaceful
birthed out of
there's a
teenager
peaceful
therapy,
answer.
which was
God
so
damn
popular in
it.
2020.
I
Did
was
that come across your radar at
making
all?
a stupid fucking
There was this
joke.
huge hit podcast. It was like one of the first hit Gen Z podcasts. It was a bunch of teenagers in 2020, and I think they even started in 2019 that basically got podcast equipment and they started opening up about their lives and kind of having like
All right,
these
let's go
therapy
again. All right,
sessions
hey, what
where it
the
would
fuck?
be like these in-depth conversations about friendships and navigating different relationships and kind of interpersonal dynamics as well. The podcast eventually broke up because they all went to college, but I feel like it was this like unfiltered peek into these teenagers' lives. And it was so compelling because it was so unfiltered. They didn't have video, they didn't have thumbnails, like it was really real and raw. And it's interesting to see that back in
Okay, I'm way too late on the parry. Oh my
Where they
god.
seem so visually optimized. Like, are any of these podcasts not video podcasts?
No, they are all video podcasts. All of the ones that I've covered at least are video podcasts. I mean, you know this better than anyone. Like, you can't really have a podcast and not have it be a video podcast these days. That's how people are finding your content. They're not finding it on Spotify. Like, Spotify and other podcast platforms make it like really hard. There's no organic discovery mechanism. So that's really how people are finding podcasts now. Like, even people my age,
Bye-bye.
even millennials are finding podcasts on Instagram Reels and TikTok.
What effect do you think the like YouTubeification of podcasts and just the visual medium and like clip-based short form culture is having on the content that these kids are producing? Because so much of it feels so optimized for these platforms. I feel like that's what made the MD Foodie Boys go viral initially, is like they had these like really highly edited like short form clips that sort of mimic the style of like more professional podcasts. How do you see sort of social media impacting the actual content strategy on these pods?
So I think it's a couple things, with the exception of the GSD Nation podcast. These podcasts are apolitical. They're not touching on any controversial topics. Literally, like, the most controversial topic that the MD Foodie Boys touches on is celery and whether or not it's good. So I do think that's very advertiser friendly, and I think that's very algorithm friendly. So I think that is a huge benefit when you have these like isolated little 30-second clips of kids talking about, you know, the most innocuous topics in the world. Like, that's going to go a lot more viral than something that is perhaps more controversial or more contentious.
Oh my god, I
also
can't
think
take it anymore,
it's just
man.
the novelty
I'm getting
of it.
abused.
These kids are sitting around, their content is virtually, except for what they're talking about and except for like how small
I'm literally,
they are,
I'm just
like,
getting
their
abused
content
today.
visually is
I am not
virtually
on my game.
indistinguishable from like a clip from a Rogan episode. So it's like really funny and really novel to see these little kids with like these big headphones and this really expensive podcasting equipment sort of aping the Rogan aesthetic And I think that really resonates with people.
I feel like it's also just the way they program these podcasts is so optimized for the internet. And I think that that's interesting. Like one thing, when I was talking to the MD Foodie Boys for my interview a couple months ago, they were talking about having different segments. And I think a lot of these young people, because they've grown up in this podcast medium and they're so aware of what they need to go viral, it seems like they're optimizing their podcasts for these clips or these moments that are clippable moments, or
yeah, I don't like any of this like gamification.
Very easily package, and I feel like that's a departure from like the previous version of the Gen Z podcast that we saw, where they were just more people like kids experimenting and they weren't thinking so intentionally about the internet. It seems like all of these podcasts are intentionally made for the internet.
Yeah, it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing that's come from the regimentation by corporations of our internet experience.
19-year-old brother, I think it's Chubworm's brother, is the one who's like managing the social media.
You see just like a bunch of like tools for Facebook. Facebook wants you to do these things to build your engagement in your profile, and they all happen to be things that happen to do with like giving them as much data as you possibly can,
even like older Gen Z,
and producing as much engagement that like other people give them as much data as they possibly can.
I remember when I had my own podcast when I was at Rolling Stone, and we were trying to figure out how to use TikTok as a way to like help promote the podcast. There was a real learning curve. Like, we didn't really understand how what we considered to be a purely audio-based format was going to translate over to a short-form video-based format. And Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they just get that. They just get that innately.
I want to talk about podcasting equipment too, because a lot of these kids have nice podcasting equipment.
I know, yeah.
And podcast equipment too, the prices have gone down, although I don't know what the story is with tariffs, but you can get like a decent mic and decent cameras. And it seems like technology has progressed to the point where you don't need like to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to make a decent podcast. There's platforms like Riverside, like we're using now too, that allow you to do it remote. But is there funding going into this market? Like, how do some of these kids have such nice equipment? And do they have like corporate backers?
In terms of the reporting that I did, like the people that I spoke with, there was a mix. For GSD, the dad had quit his job and was investing, you know, all of his resources, virtually had a bunch of savings. It was investing all of his resources in this podcast and in this content empire. So in terms of financial backing, that's what they have. They have the benefit of that. In terms of MD Foodie Boys, I don't know if they got into specifics with you, but what they told me was that essentially McLovin's
The man who stood at the pinnacle of life, Champion Victor, has returned. Do you remember the great wrestler Victor, the Hercules of Crowd, the man who never beat down?
I think you're just
okay,
like,
there's
sure,
a lot,
you guys
there's a
can
lot.
come over and do your little food podcast.
The illness
for an
can't
hour
bother
in
him
our
anymore.
podcast
The
studio.
seed-like will and superhuman
so
power that
it's very
defy
ad
fate.
hoc. I would actually be curious
world's
to hear
strongest
your
man.
thoughts on this.
Okay.
Because they blew up pretty much right off the bat, right?
I'm gonna have
they
to fight
started
that
in
guy.
November.
I'm assuming.
They started going viral. They had a video that got
The
like,
lore
5
of this
million
game isn't
views,
interesting
maybe,
enough.
you know,
Like,
a
I'm
week or
sorry.
two after
It's a fun
launching.
game.
And
I do like the world.
sort of framed it as
Just not
something that they were really surprised by. And obviously, like when you interview content creators, they all say that. But I'm curious as to whether or not you think that's true. Like, I'm curious as to whether or not you think they were conscious of the fact that they were sort of tailor-made for virality.
Are the Foodie Boys industry plants in the podcast?
Not industry plants, but like
I just have to go the other way.
You know,
Yeah.
There's
That's
more to the
embarrassing. He's gonna hit me
narrative,
right
I
when I
guess.
walk.
I think it's this
never mind.
phenomenon where you see people like mimicking these children, basically mimicking adult style male podcasts, and that being such a trope, and a trope that's so mocked online. And I think the Costco universe comparison was also really good, where they fit into like the broader brain rot content category, which is just content that is so optimized for the internet. And I think that's what was interesting to people, is like, here's a bunch of 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. I can't remember exactly how old they are, but they're middle schoolers. And their content's just very well edited and well produced. And as you mentioned, it is the older brother that's, you know, doing a bunch of it. But just the idea that kids today can produce really high quality content, I think was enticing to people. And just the fact that they are having this serious discussion in front of these cameras, these
that
really
was
nice
just
mics about
bad
potato
chance.
chips or barbecue wings. Like, there's an absurd quality to it.
I
think
literally
that
tried to
it's kind of
serpentine and
interesting to
everything.
see. I do know at the same time that there's a lot of interest in this space, as you mentioned, from advertisers and brands. And you actually talked to a company called Pocket Watch as well, right? What is Pocket Watch and what are they doing in this space? space?
Pocket Watch is a kids entertainment multi-platform studio. They're probably best known for producing Ryan's World. Ryan's World is sort of like the kitty YouTuber, I guess. He got famous when he was 4 years old for his unboxing videos.
Oh my god, this is horrifying. I'm gonna be real. Like, I'm a little horrified right now.
He's 12 or 13, and he's sort of transitioning into like the preteen tween space. And there was the Pocket Watch made a movie about him. While
This is
his
so
sisters,
weird.
he has these
I
two
don't know.
young
I don't know how
sisters
to
are
like
kind of
process
taking
this.
on the role that he previously had as he ages. So Pocket Watch is best known for that. They produced his TV show, they produced his movie, which came out last summer. I visited the Pocket Watch studio last summer, and they had all this Ryan's World merch just lying around, which I think a lot of adults would be surprised that there's this giant multi-million-dollar toy industry around this one very little kid. But Ryan is a huge celebrity in the YouTube sphere. And they also represent a bunch of other preteen and kiddie YouTubers. Love Diana is the other big one. I'm not sure how old she is. I don't remember. I think she's also aging out a little bit. She's like 11.
If you are a child influencer and you make it big online, I feel like you want to work with Pocket Watch because they're kind of like the gold standard. They provide a lot of structure for the kids. Like, if, working with them, like, things are going to be by the book in the sense of like, it's an actual company that's going to make sure that like your taxes are done and the children are compensated and stuff. But also they just have such a great track record of launching talent and developing talent.
Yeah, so I spoke to Amanda Klecker, who is the SVP of Marketing and Franchise at Pocket Watch, because I was curious, like, if this thing that I was observing, tweens entering the podcasting space, if this was just sort of my observation, or if this was actually being reflected by the kids' entertainment space at large.
Fuck
and what she told me
you.
is that they launched a podcasting division, an audio division, like relatively recently, I think maybe a year ago, and they're focusing more on narrative podcasts, like scripted narrative-based podcasts for their audience, which is much younger than the people watching MD Foodie Boys or any of the other podcasts that I reference in the piece.
So scripted podcasts, like sort of like mini shows, like series, like
like scripted serial. They did this mystery serial scripted podcast for the Gem Sisters, which is this trio of sisters who are also big YouTubers.
It's so interesting because I feel like we're just the line between what a podcast is and what just like a YouTube series or a video series is just completely gone at this point. Did you talk to them at all about how they think about podcasting and why they're leaning into this medium compared to kind of their other YouTube empire?
I think they're leaning into that specific medium because they see that that's where the growth is. I think YouTube's podcasting content has like 1 billion views or something ridiculous like that. Like, they see those numbers and they're like, okay, this is where the market is going. This is where our audience is going.
I feel like such like a weirdo. Like, I don't think I am though. I think it's how most people are.
In some way,
where this is like what I want to do. It's just like engage with things that I like.
Is one of the few
I don't
mediums
think
that,
about
like, if you get
playing
subscribers on,
systems like
you
this
can,
that
you can
much. To
count
be
on your
honest,
content
I don't
being
even need
delivered.
to though.
If somebody
so.
subscribes to my podcast feed, I know that show is going to go into their feed. Whereas I feel like everything else on social media is not distributed that way, right? It's distributed algorithmically. And so do you feel like part of a lot of these YouTubers pivoting to podcasting is also just an attempt to build that more direct relationship with their audience?
I think it is. I think it is a way for them to build a more direct relationship with their audience because in some ways it's the most intimate format there is, right? Like, even if it's edited. There's something about listening to a podcast, listening to a bunch of people who you've formed these parasocial relationships with, talking about their lives. There's something about that is easier to connect to and that appears more authentic than a YouTuber who's making like a very heavily edited vlog. So I think there is that aspect to it. I think that a lot of these creators have correctly identified that Gen Z and Gen Alpha puts a premium on authenticity, whatever that means. I mean, I hate that word because like the content on social media isn't really
authentic. Yeah,
regardless
it's not.
of the format.
It's
but
literally, it's coy, it's desperate, honestly. Most of it all is. That's why I never got really into it very much because I couldn't bring myself to be that coy.
There's that kind of viral
But it's become so
tweet,
fucking normalized. It's just like part of the way.
Like, we should all know less about each other. And when I think about the rise of these podcasts, especially some of the YouTube ones where it's a lot of tween and teen kids like spilling about their lives, where they're talking more about like the dating advice or crushes.
What's the name of the
things.
clown from
I guess what impact do you think
Spawn?
this will
I don't remember
have
his name.
on these kids going
Dominator
forward? Do you
or
think
something?
there's any sort of downsides or concern that should be had about
Violator,
just giving kids
right?
access
Okay,
to, like, this
Violator.
unmitigated
Oh my God,
media
Dominator
to
or something.
open
I'm a
up
fucking
about
idiot. I'm gonna
so
pee.
much sort of personal stuff.
I think that you and I kind of have the same stance on like the child influencer space, or a similar stance, which is, I mean, my stance at least is basically, do I love that an influencer is the number one thing that every kid under the age of 18 wants to be? Like, no, I don't love that. Like, as a parent, I'm not a huge fan of that. Do I love that like Mr. Beast has more name recognition than like Barack Obama? No, not particularly. But at the same time, like, I do think there are definitely positives to kids being in the social media space and kids being in the influencer space. Not only because this is just the direction that the culture is moving in. We can't stop that, and we have to embrace that and accept it. But it's also positive for exactly the reason that you said. It's positive for kids to see other kids like them opening up about the struggles that they have and to realize they're not alone. One thing that really struck me was when I was talking to Matt, the dad from GSD Nation. He was framing this podcast and sort of building his kids' content empire to me as a way to sort of instill in them the value of hard work, a way for them to think critically about issues and to learn the value of debating. And on one hand, I'm thinking, this is the most conservative argument I've ever heard. Like, this is the most right-wing influencer thing I've ever heard. Like, that can't possibly be true. These kids aren't learning how to debate anything. Like, they have the same opinions you do. But at the same time, as a parent, I get what he's saying. And I do see the value to that. I think he said something like they could be sitting in front of a screen all day watching Minecraft gameplays, or they could be actually making content, and I would rather they be making content. And I totally agree with that as a parent.
That's what I tell a lot of parents too. Like, when their kid wants to start a YouTube channel or podcast or whatever, it's like, obviously you want to have some oversight, encourage them to steer away from controversial topics,
You
but
want
it's
to
good for kids to learn
encourage
like
creativity
marketing,
over
video
consumption.
editing,
That's
you know,
not
like
like
these
a new
skills
thing
that are
even.
ultimately creative skills.
That's
that
always
allow
been
them
the
to express
case.
themselves, but also will help them in the job market
Instead of sitting
help
around
them,
watching
you know, in
TV
a-
or
potentially a future
you know,
career.
playing,
I think so too.
or listening to
When
music
I
or something.
was in high school
Make it,
and when I
make
was
it
in
yourself.
college and
That's
even
been
when
the
I was
way
in
it's
graduate
been for a
school
long time,
training,
but
to be a
it is at
journalist,
our
like, I never
fingertips
learned
so
about
much
any of
more.
these
That
things.
that
And
constant
it wasn't
matrix
like YouTube didn't
of,
exist.
like,
It wasn't like social
fulfillment.
media didn't exist, and it
Media,
wasn't like there
like,
weren't conversations going on about how
instant
eventually
gratification.
the traditional journalism model was going to be switching.
It's
to a
right at
more
our fingertips, and it's hard to
individualistic
resist.
content
Harder than
creator
ever before
model.
in
Those
history.
conversations were happening, but I wasn't getting.
Look, I'm doing
any
it right now. I'm playing
practical
this
training
game.
about
Literally,
how to
literally,
sort of
I
learn
could be
these
doing something more
skills and
productive,
use
but
these
I'm playing
tools.
this game instead.
So I
It's
think
because
good
it's at my
that kids
fingertips.
Are learning them at a young age with supervision. With supervision.
Always with supervision.
Yes.
Do not let your 11-year-old start a podcast without supervision. I also think it's interesting just how much the media talks about young people and their beliefs and their thoughts and what they're doing and what they're eating, or, you know, what the trends are. And it's interesting to see, like, as you charted in your piece, this like rise of these kids really building their own audiences and speaking for
Oh
themselves.
my God.
And I wonder how that's going to affect the media environment, because I think for the first time we're seeing kids that have always been kind of spoken for in the media develop their own platforms and speak for themselves and be able to talk about, like, I know you think that, like, you read in the New York Times that, like, this is the real trend among
Wait,
Gen
what the
Z,
fuck
but
is
actually
happening
we all
right
love,
now?
I don't know.
Where did
this
they come
other
from?
trend, or like we're all eating these kinds of Doritos now, and I think it's valuable for marketers, but also just like for culture. It's interesting to hear these
I didn't think
the
I,
thoughts from these kids from their own mouths.
I agree with
attracted
that
the
to an
attention of any of
extent
those
that it's
things. What the
interesting.
fuck?
I mean, maybe not like super interesting, but I do think that it like pokes holes in a lot of like the sort of lazy media like narratives around Gen Alpha or Gen Z. I don't even know what like a 13-year-old is these days, but I'm just interested in like what impact that might have if more of these kids get in and start asserting themselves, like what impact that will have on sort of the coverage of their generation.
Well, I think much like the content creator model, I think it's going to be incredibly destabilizing for the media. I definitely think this is going to get bigger. I definitely think there's going to be more money put into this space over the next year or so. I definitely think the age of the average podcaster is going to get younger. I definitely think that we're gonna see a wide range of these types of podcasts, some of which are perhaps more high quality and more positive for humanity than others. I think from a media perspective, from an industry perspective, like it's gonna be very destabilizing. At the same time, this might sound like cynical, but I don't think 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds change. I think that very few of these podcasters are really bringing anything to the table that's gonna like surprise us about what Gen Alpha
True. Yeah,
thinks,
no, I
you
mean,
know?
but
Like,
it
there's
will
always,
happen.
like, the Greta
She's wrong about
Thunberg,
that. Like, it's
you know,
going to
there are
happen.
always
Someone
outliers,
will
but
have a
yeah.
unique
I guess
idea
I
that
get so many
only could be
pitches
produced by
of,
someone
like,
who grew up in
dumb,
that
fake
environment and has
trend
been
things.
raised doing this
And
exact
I remember
same
this
thing.
happening with millennials
And it'll change
as well,
everything.
like when
That-
we were
that's
younger, and it would just
literally
be all
just
these, like,
true.
stupid trend think
I don't know what
pieces.
it'll be.
And
You don't
I
know
just
what
think
it'll be,
as
but
more
it'll
of these
happen.
people are speaking for themselves online, it's just much easier to kind of determine how much of that is organic and actual versus kind of manufactured PR spin.
And I think that's also it's going to get harder to defend
Okay, so you just have to fight
within
through.
this specific space and this specific topic that we're talking about as well. I mean, we just had a conversation about whether or not we think the MD Foodie Boys are industry plans, and I mean that's somewhat tongue in cheek, but like, I
Dude,
do think
oh
that
my
as people
God.
realize
How
that
does
there's
it
market
move
for
like
this,
that?
There's going to be a lot.
It literally passed
more
through them. I
industry
hate shit like that.
plans type content in this space.
And branded content, and like you said, like people pouring money in. It's
Okay,
interesting
see,
too
like,
to
what
see
the
like
fuck?
these podcasting networks and studios will probably likely go for younger talent. We know that these talent agencies already have like child influencer divisions and things like that. So it seems like it's really, it should really grow significantly.
Yeah, and I think the MD Foodie Boys is a really great example of that, because I think at the time that you interviewed them, they didn't have any brand deals in place.
They had never even like spoken to anyone before, so it was a very
Yeah, because you did the first interview with them.
I was like, gotta get the scoop with
Welcome,
these 12-year-olds. But it's interesting to see, like, I mean,
welcome.
as you covered in your piece, right? Like within
Oh,
a
no.
couple months, they're with Dave
Oh my
Portnoy
God.
himself.
Exactly.
Fuck
They're
you.
with Dave Portnoy himself. They're also working with Kava. They're working with Taco Bell. They're working with Buffalo Wild Wings. Like, these are huge brand deals, and this is in the span of a couple weeks actually. Because I think our story came out like maybe a couple weeks after your interview did. It's crazy how fast they're growing.
I'm kind of excited and terrified to see the MD Foodie Boys empire grows. I will say, when I did ask the MD Foodie Boys their inspiration, they mentioned Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and the level of influence some of these like reactionary male podcasters have on children.
Oh
cannot be
no.
understated.
That was also something that really interested me in
Just where you've been?
trying to report this, in sort of what the success of this podcast and the success of similar Tween Boy podcasts,
The human
what that
condition.
reflects about
No matter-
masculinity
okay,
and
okay,
performing
yeah.
masculinity
You're the Riddler, I get
online.
it.
Because like you're absolutely right, they are clearly hugely
Oh, fuck, I don't know.
influenced by these somewhat toxic male podcasters, and who are promoting this somewhat toxic view of masculinity. Even though the MD Foodie Boys aren't talking about like ayahuasca,
Shut up.
and they're not talking about like pronatalism, like they're not talking about anything toxic, but they're cosplaying it. Like they're cosplaying masculinity. And I think it's really interesting to see that and to see how influential these figures have been on these boys' relationship. I don't want to get like too Judith Butler, but like how they perform gender.
Well, it's interesting too to like look at some of these tween girl podcasts
It wasn't
too,
that clever.
and see how they perform.
I was
like,
expecting
what they
something more,
view
honestly.
as like
I'm
womanhood.
just kidding.
Also, the podcasters that they look up to. I mean, in that space, I think it's actually much better because a lot of at least young kids that I've talked to.
Oh,
in
no,
that space
should I-
really
no,
look up
wait,
to,
no, it
like,
doesn't make
Chamberlain,
sense.
Or maybe Alex Cooper is mentioned a lot, although
Because Glass wouldn't work either.
fan base, but it is definitely, I think they're shaped by that same manosphere podcast where they're women, so they think, okay, I've got to talk about dating, I've got to talk about
Failed.
beauty,
I
I've got to
failed
talk
it.
about these like sort of traditionally
Okay, shut up. Go
feminine
away.
interests, I guess, because that's where the audience growth is, and that is sort of what you are supposed to do as a woman online. Like the Girl Talk podcast, like it's largely about like these interpersonal things and things that traditionally like girls would gossip about.
Yes, it's very much performing femininity in the same way that the MD Foodie Boys are performing a certain version of masculinity, for sure.
Well, I can't wait for these children to grow up and have massive political platforms, which is slightly terrifying. I mean, you're a mother. Would you let your kids start a podcast?
That's such a good question. I was thinking about it the whole time that I was reporting this out. I think it would be so boring, honestly. Like, I wouldn't want to inflict that on humanity, because my kids are 8 and 2. One of them just learned to like speak in full sentences. And honestly, like I would say that even if my oldest was like a little older, just going back to the point I was making earlier, like I don't think these podcasts are interesting. That's kind of appeal.
Yeah, isn't that the appeal? Is like the sort of banality of it.
Banality, yes.
It's just something to put on that you don't have to think about it too
because
much.
I do think that, like,
I do that with
at
this
the
kind
end
of
the day,
content too,
12
to be
and
honest.
13-year-olds, like,
Like,
yes, they have conflicts
I have a
in
lot
their
more
lives,
pressing
and
things
yes,
to think
they're
about
thinking
than
about
like
a lot of really serious
you know,
things,
horrible
but, like,
politics.
the stuff that they're willing to talk about publicly
If
is,
I'm
like,
being completely
boring. Like, it's
real, and this is also just
sucks.
escapism for me
and
too.
they're just like figuring out who they are and how they want to present themselves, and usually how they want to present themselves is like not that interesting. All of which is to say, no, I wouldn't let them, because I would find it boring personally, and I think that their audience would find it boring too.
All right, EJ, well, thank you so much for joining. Where can people follow your work?
Thank you so much for having me. I am on Blue
She
Sky
didn't have vocal fry. I
at
liked it.
EJ
Oh my
Dixon. I'm
god.
on Twitter at EJ Dixon. I'm on
Everybody,
Instagram at
that
EJ
other
Dixon,
person that Taylor
and
brings
I am
out all
a
the time,
senior writer
such
at
extreme
New York
vocal
Magazine's
fry.
The
I don't even have a problem with vocal fry. She just
All
does it
that's
like
it for the show. You can watch
to the
full
nth
episodes
degree.
of Power User on my YouTube channel at Taylor Lorenz. Don't forget to subscribe to my tech and
All right,
online
shut up,
culture
Taylor.
newsletter, User Mag. That's usermag.co, usermag.co to support my work and to keep this podcast going. That's usermag.co, usermag.co to support my work and to
Okay, this is where. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, let's.
I never really watched Philosophy Tube. I have no strong feelings about Philosophy Tube.
Okay, let's talk about bread tubers. Specifically, how every single one of like the big old guard bread tubers turned out to
I
be
use
a
Opera for
moronic
my
liberal.
YouTube
Shock
ad
horror,
blocker,
right?
which
You
has
know,
not been
who
very
could have seen
effective
that
lately
coming?
in
So
terms
today,
of
we're
me
going to
not
be
having to
talking
hit
about
refresh,
not
but it's
ContraPoints.
still
We're going to be
blocking the
talking about
ads,
philosophy.
which I
You
do
just
value. I don't
released
like
a
listening to
video
them at all.
basically incompetently covering the sort of thing that I covered 4 or 5 years ago in my video on Manifest Destiny and Lebensraum. Philosophy 2 videos are basically worse than Wikipedia articles. Like, you would legitimately be better served reading about like American colonial ideology on a Wikipedia page than you would be from watching a Philosophy Tube video on it. And this is in general too. It's not just that like she's not left enough for me. It's that she's just wrong on a lot of the things that she talks about. And this has become more and more obvious as the years go by, and she's forced to deal with topics that she is less and less familiar with, and is just still trying to pump out content anyway. She's the #2 purveyor of style over substance on YouTube after ContraPoint. So this is my video on the same topic, and this is her new video, incompetently
we're done.
covering the same topic. Like American colonial ideology, blah, blah, blah. Now, Philosophy Tube is someone who has straight up acknowledged recently that she doesn't talk about Gaza because she's worried about how it might affect her career. Like,
Jesus,
I read a
really?
comment said, Abby is a professional actor, and making a capital S statement on how she really feels would probably do an extreme amount of damage to her career. And then she responds to that with a heart, clearly implying that she, you know, that's the reason. I don't want her in my career, because she's in like Star Wars shows and stuff now. So that's
I
more
feel like we're
valuable to
entering
her
a new
than actual
era
like
where like you can't
political
just be
action,
like an
right?
actor who
Maintaining
has
her career.
nothing
She can't
behind
speak
you,
about Gaza
like no
because she's maintaining
values,
her career.
nothing.
And she
Like
does
even if you
mention
have
Gaza
bad things,
for,
people
like,
will
the
support
first
you as
time,
long as you have
or one
things,
of
as
like
long as you
maybe
take
twice ever
stances.
since the genocide began.
I
In
feel like this
video,
kind of wishy-washy
not
bullshit
a good way.
is dying.
Like,
It's dying
paying
out.
lip
I
service
really
to
think
both
that.
sides on the issue on whether Israel genocides Palestinians or not.
Nobody
Get ready,
wants it anymore.
because it's a fucking doozy.
People
and I'm
want
going to
people
tell you
that have clear
precisely why after
convictions.
you watch it.
Again,
Speaking
I
of which,
genuinely believe
this is a bigger topic than we have time to get into today, but
I'm just running around
Philosophy
like an
Tube's
idiot
audience
now.
has
I'm
a
sorry.
diversity
I
of
know,
political
I know.
views,
I have no idea
and I'm
where
sure
I'm
some
going.
of you will be drawing parallels between the process that the United States went through with American Indians and the process Israel has gone through with Palestinians since it was founded in 1948.
You notice that she does not say that she is on either side of this. She's just acknowledging both sides of the issue. the raper and the raped, the murderer and the murdered, the colonizer and the colonized. There's two sides to this, right?
Illegal settlements, crimes by settlers tolerated by government, American presidents saying they want to just move in and take over the land. Our question for today is, why is America the way that it is? And today, in America, many people are protesting the actions of the Israeli government. You may have heard people describe Israel...
People describe it, not her.
...as a settler colonial state or as genocidal. And these historical parallels are partly why they say that. I am aware that Israeli scholars have their responses.
The Israelis have their responses, okay? There's nuance here. There's two sides to this.
That the US and Israel are
man.
not the only countries to instantiate this pattern or something very close to it, and that a proper treatment of this subject would need to be done at length with due concern for the global rise in
Very real.
anti-Semitic hate crime that...
I don't care about this that much. Like, I know
No,
they're
it
crazy
wouldn't.
Zionists.
Why?
I don't know what
What the
damage this is
fuck?
causing.
What
Maybe I'm
anti-Semitic hate
ignorant,
crimes
but
have
I
to do
don't
with
think
whether
this is
there's a
that big of a
genocide
deal.
of Palestinians or not. But I want you to note something
I just
there.
don't care.
I want you to note something there. How, when it comes to the genocide of the Palestinians, there's two sides with their own opinions, and she doesn't want to pronounce either way. But when it comes to a supposed rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes, that
Yeah,
is
not
stated
about
as a
the
fact.
genocide, of course.
That is stated
I still
as
care about
an
that. It's just
uncontroversial
this specific
fact. That is
topic
her
is
opinion.
not-
She
it doesn't
states
seem
as
to be
her
helpful.
opinion, there is a rise in
I don't know what
anti-Semitic
she
hate
has
crimes.
to do with,
And this is
like,
somehow related
changing
to
anything.
the question of whether or not there is genocide in Gaza, which she is not willing to pronounce on either way. That says so fucking much about her. 60,000 Palestinians.
I feel like maybe
minimum.
like 2 years ago, like you know, like back in like after October 7th, I would have been totally on the board of like, oh no, any creator who is not like who is like maintaining this kind of like message is bad and they need to be like called out. But at this point, like years in, like I just know they're gonna keep going with this are going. Like I just don't know what I'm gonna do at this point. And I know that the messaging war is being lost by them too. So like what do I have to do? They're losing. I can just keep boosting the people that I know are going to make people see the truth.
Slaughtered by Israel for being Palestinian, for not being Jewish. Apparently, this is something
I'm sorry
which,
for wandering around
whether
aimlessly
we
this
can
whole
describe
time.
as a genocide, that's up in the air. However, a rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes, where Jews, around 80-90% of which worldwide support Israel, are Zionists, support the genocidal project that
Okay, that's
Israel
right, I need to go
represents.
now.
Like, she just uncritically spouts it as fact that there is a rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes. She frames Jews, like right now, as victims more so than she ever did Palestinians in her own words. There's no analysis of whether, like, you know, there are two sides to this argument of whether there is actually a supposed global anti-Semitism
Bro, I
crisis.
still haven't
She just
found that
states it as
thing.
fact
Jesus
that
Christ,
there is,
something's wrong.
and that this somehow has to be talked about when dealing with the issue of the Jewish supremacist genocide of Palestinians by Israel. It has to be considered. Like, I guess she thinks she has to water down her opinion on that. Just let, you know, less people do anti-Semitism because of it. What an insane thing to say. Now, there is no anti-Semitism crisis. If philosophy to have had to try and justify that using evidence, she would end up having to cite like the ADL and Israel lobby groups and stuff. And if you analyze that supposed evidence for it, it falls over flat. What there is a global anti-Palestinianism crisis. You know how we know that? Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been massacred for being Palestinians in just 2 years. Not even talking about before that, when there still was a global anti-Palestinianism crisis. If you're willing to
That worked
pronounce
out as well as
so
I expected.
incredibly confidently, without even acknowledging that there might be any sort of fault to the claim that you're making here, that there is a global
Here, you know what? I
anti-Semitism
think it's
crisis.
because
And
they
yet,
think I'm a
when it comes
commenter.
to
I need
the
to
wholesale massacre of Palestinians for their
put on a little
ethnicity,
fancier
for not being
robes.
of the Jewish ethnicity, there's suddenly nuance, and there's both sides, and Israeli scholars also have their arguments, and you're scared to pronounce either way. That is so indicative of who you are and where you stand and why. She is trying to toe the line here so that she keeps getting in like roles in fucking Star Wars and Marvel and shit. There is no reason to continue watching Philosophy Tube. Her videos are worse than Wikipedia articles, as I said. Her video on Nietzsche was fucking horrible. She, very revealingly as well, she is a massive philo-Semite. And you can tell because she spent half her fucking video on Nietzsche trying to paint
Is
him
that
as
why
like
I've been
an
hearing that
anti-Semite.
word so
Like,
much?
there
Is
is
it
less
him?
evidence that Nietzsche is an anti-Semite than there is for Karl Marx being an anti-Semite. Less direct textual evidence of that. And it's fucking a totally shitty video and a really bizarre thing of his thought to be focusing on. Her videos just aren't good. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And she treats herself like an academic philosopher, though, when she hasn't really been seriously engaging with philosophy for a very long time, and she's just sort of been phoning it in with videos that are worse than Wikipedia articles for like 5 years at this point. There's no real value.
Okay, I killed that one.
And she's not willing to use her platform for political good. She's not even willing to say that the Gaza genocide is happening. This is someone who should just be wholly discarded. It really is that simple, okay? There are better people who have covered any topic that she covers far better, far more comprehensively, better than what you can get out of a Wikipedia article.
Why can't I time
far
that?
Better served reading like the Wikipedia article on fucking Nietzsche than you would watching Philosophy Tube's video on it. You'd be better served reading the Wikipedia article on Manifest
You know, I think it's
Destiny
actually
than you would be
literally
watching
that I can't
her
even walk
video on it.
after,
And you'd
like, it's a
certainly
punish
better served
phase or
reading
something.
the fucking Wikipedia article on the Gaza genocide than you would
And you
taking
just start
her
waiting for attacks,
bullshit
like I'm playing
about
Sekiro
how,
or
you know,
something.
both sides have their
Or, you
opinions.
know,
However,
whatever.
what really matters is right now is anti-Semitism.
That was annoying.
There's another part of this video where she recommends someone. And the person who she recommends is not only another creator of Nebula who she's partnered with. That's something that you should think about here. Nebula famously fired Second Thought for being too against the Gaza genocide, for being too anti-Israel. And the other creator who she mentions here is a depraved Zionist who I've made videos of before. She gets him to read quotes for her.
The desires of too many frontier
This is Knowing Better's vote.
white people to seize by
And she recommends Knowing Better's video on the matter. Video on American colonialism.
And Indian boarding schools, which all happened after Jefferson. If you're interested in a broad sweep of this history, Knowing Better made a fantastic video on it that I heartily recommend.
Now, Knowing Better is a depraved Zionist, a very open Zionist, and I have videos on this. I made a video or two going over this specifically, one on my main channel, this one right here, where I specifically pointed out the ridiculousness of the fact that Knowing Better found it very easy to denounce American colonial genocide in retrospect, while presently defending Israeli colonial genocide that's actually happening right now. Knowing Better is an absolutely depraved Zionist who said that Palestinians wanting to return to their homes is anti-Semitic. Here's a tweet of Knowing Better breaking down, as he said, what he called a dog whistle. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free and Palestine will never die. Palestinians wanting to return to their homes, he said, was an anti-Semitic dog whistle. This is the person who Philosophy Tube is going to promote in her videos. In a video where both sides fucking genocide, ongoing right now. 2 years into a genocide and she can't fucking bring herself to just call it plainly what it is, to even make a video about it. Now, if you want to see a video about Manifest Destiny and stuff like that, American colonial ideology, Native American genocide by the US, you should not watch Knowing Better's video on it. You should not watch Philosophy Tube's video on it. You shouldn't watch my video on it either, even though my video is a much, much, much better synthesis of the scholarship than those two could ever manage. That is actually grounded in references to the present, while theirs are totally divorced from it. They frame that sort of thing as like divorce. That's why she was so afraid to make any sort of
He looks like the guy in the
American
wheelchair
colonialism
from
and Israel today.
Nightmare
And she just sort of
Before
said others
Christmas.
will make that link.
The
Don't
doctor.
fucking watch Knowing Better's video on it. A few recommendations
bill
that I have for
and
you.
the, like,
Her reading list here is
brain
just so
thing.
basic. It is really, really
Scar.
basic. Like Patrick Wolf, Settler Colonialism and
The brain
Colonialism
scar.
as an elimination of the native. That one's like a 20-page journal article meant as like an introduction. If you want to actually engage with this issue in any substantial way, read Carol P. Cackle, The American West and the Nazi East, the connection that Philosophy Tube would never make. The Native Ground by Kathleen Duval, which goes over in detail how things were immediately before the foundation of the United States and going and rolling up to it. And I mean, there's more that I would recommend as well, but right now I just forgot the names because I read them 4 years ago when I made that video. It speaks a lot to how behind Knowing Better and Philosophy Tube are, and specifically how Philosophy Tube is comfortable talking about things
Jesus
that
Christ,
happened
I'm fucked.
200 years ago, but would never take a stand today. Of course, except against anti-Semitism. What she would do is incessantly talk about anti-Semitism and insert it into her videos endlessly, while 90% of Jews worldwide are backing a Jewish supremacist genocide in which minimum 60,000 people,
no
including
way.
20,000 children, have been massacred. So BreadTube is just worthless. We don't need BreadTube. We don't need any of these original BreadTubers anymore. ContraPoints is just like an out-and-out Zionist liberal
Jesus
Philosophy
Christ.
cares more about like being a mainstream actor than she does actual politics. H Bomber guy who always made videos about shit that doesn't matter hasn't even been able to bring himself to like making a token denouncement of the Gaza genocide. All of these people are just liberals. They were always liberals.
I feel like this
and
is
they
the
were
difference between
misconstrued
me
as something
and
else
Bad
just because
empanadas. Like, I don't
they
really
made
give a shit
videos about easy
HR
targets like Ben Shapiro
like, if you
and
don't
Jordan
know
Peterson.
anything about
Like,
Gaza, I
easy
don't care if you
right-wing
make a
targets
video
like
about
those
it or
guys.
not.
These
You know?
people ultimately
It's only the
have
people that
interests
make it about it in the bad
beyond their
way.
channels
If
that
they make it,
are
if they make a
beholden
video
to.
about it, but in the
Okay?
bad way, then it's a problem.
That's why they're like.
If they just don't
Well,
make
no,
a
I
video
mean,
about it, it's like,
ContraPoint,
yeah,
as far
okay,
as
you
I
just
know,
don't,
doesn't.
you're not
She's just in
qualified
it
to
for the
talk
love
about
of
it,
the
and
game.
you accept that. That's
But
fine.
Philosophy
I don't
2,
care.
H Bomber guy, etc. Those are Nebula people. Nebula is a Zionist platform. It heavily restricts what you're allowed to say about Israel and how you're allowed to say it. Philosophy 2 is also like trying to become like a mainstream actress rather, and that even further limits what she feels comfortable saying, even though many other actors way bigger than she will ever be are saying this shit loud and proud, like Javier Bardem is saying this sort of shit all the time. People with way more to lose than she has. This is like a world-famous actor who genuinely has a ton to lose from talking about this stuff, way more than she would ever have. And his entire fucking Instagram feed, for example, is about the genocide in Gaza. She has no excuse for her cowardice aside from financial cowardice, celebrity cowardice, selfishness. Dump these people. Dump them. Get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. We never needed them in the first place, but I hope people will realize that more and more now. Creators are already
Okay, what the
beholden
fuck?
to two things. One is like Google's terms of service, you know, Google's monetization policies and stuff like that.
Where do I
Or
go?
depending on the platform they're on, you know, change that to like Twitch or whatever. And maybe like the opinions of their Patreon members.
I fought so hard, and now
But
I feel like
Philosophy
I don't
2
have
goes
any,
way
like,
beyond
okay, wait,
that.
hold
With
on.
the Nebula sponsorship,
Okay, well, that's not helpful.
like the fact that she's trying to become a mainstream actress. I mean, she's directly paid by Disney. I'm sure they have some sort of agreement where she's not allowed to say certain things, and she willingly accepted that.
Is it over
That's like
here?
on a whole nother level from the average creator. It's not the same sort of thing. You can easily be successful on YouTube,
Oh, okay,
on
okay,
Twitch,
hell yeah.
as independent as you can
We're back,
reasonably be on
baby.
those platforms, like I am. Philosophy Tube and others like her go way beyond that.
Never mind, we're
they
not
don't
bad.
need to do what they do.
I am not back.
She doesn't need
We
to
are
be on
way
Nebula.
back.
No,
No,
she doesn't
we're
need
behind.
to work for Disney.
We are not
she
back.
chooses to do so because it benefits her, because it's a part of her ambitions to do so. She chooses that, conscious to make more and more than what she already had, which was already enough, because that's what's more important to her than speaking her mind or, you know, being correct on politics and spreading like awareness and effective political action against imperialism and genocide. So discard her and discard anyone else who will not speak on this clearly and plainly, with no ifs or buts about anti-Semitism. The world is well past any sort of point where these people
Hell
are
yeah.
useful, and I would argue that they were
Classic
never
Dark
useful at all.
Souls strategy never fails. It never fails. Run away. When something seems too hard, just run to the next checkpoint. That's the Dark Souls winning strategy. And then you can go back and kill it if you feel like it. Way closer to where it is, too. You don't have to run back through anything, you'll just have to climb up a ladder. My, keyboards. Yeah. I'm gonna have to restart my